a patient I had, well, it was two patients. It was a 16-year-old girl and a 42-year-old mother who were struggling to lose weight, and they'd come in a few times, and it was really interesting. They seemed to have there was a bit of disharmony in their relationship. Mm-hmm. You could tell she'd reported it to me privately as well. They tried all kinds of things to lose weight, and they weren't really getting anywhere. They're very frustrated. And I noticed that the daughter always had earbuds hanging out when she came in. I think like it's mum dragging her in. And I can't remember what t-shirt she had, but it was always of a band. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. What if we try and prescribe something? And I hate the word prescribe in that context, if I'm honest, around movement and music. So I prescribed for them 5 minutes of dancing. I said, hey, like maybe when you come back from school, before you do anything, as soon as you guys come home, you dance for 5 minutes together on whatever tunes you want. And it was incredible because there was this sort of ripple effect from that. They weren't engaged, had relationship problems. Just those 5 minutes of dancing together every day very quickly transformed their relationship. They're then dancing for 10 or 15 minutes. It's something they really look forward to. They're bonding. Then they start cooking healthy meals together. Mm-hmm. And it leads to this, ripple effect, this cascade effect.
Upward spiral.
Upward spiral, yeah. And that all started with music.
Can we break this down? So I
Please.
love this story because there's so much science behind the brilliance of that prescription. So first of all, we know that when you move to music, it changes how you interpret the physical sensations of movement. So one reason that people think they don't like to exercise, they don't like it, they don't enjoy it, is they don't like the sensations of their heart rate increasing or sweating, breathing, maybe struggling to breathe a little bit. And we know that if you interpret those physical sensations as I'm out of shape, I'm too old, this isn't for me, it creates this actual the negative cascade where then you think I don't want to do this, and you have a negative memory of the exercise experience. And research shows that when you have music that you like, music that's empowering, maybe the lyrics motivate you, or it's someone like Lizzo who is just the embodiment of female power and joy, that it changes how you interpret those sensations. So suddenly you might be thinking, my heart is pounding, and you start to think, that's what happens when I'm having fun, or this is a sign that I'm getting stronger. And that feeling of sweat starts to feel like evidence of expressing your power and using your energy. And that actually changes the way people remember the exercise experience too. So if you move to music that you like, you're more likely to remember the experience as being empowering and enjoyable, and you're more likely to do it again. So that's sort of one thing that's great about your prescription. But also we know that when you move with other people, the endorphins and the endocannabinoids that get released, they're actually bonding hormones. So people who move with other people tend to like them more and trust them more. And it creates this kind of social connection. It makes it easier to connect with people. It makes it easier to resolve conflict. So if you want to strengthen a relationship with someone, moving with them is one of the best ways to do that. It just primes your neurochemistry to be able to have an easier rapport and connection. And again, like you said, so much of this is an upward spiral. There's research showing that if you exercise, you have better interactions with other people for the whole next 24 hours. And part of it is brain chemistry, and part of it is how it changes your mindset and how it makes you feel about yourself. But I love this idea that you could take a small dose of movement, something that feels accessible and fun and meaningful, and that it could have all of these ripple effects that you described.
Yeah, and I think making it small and accessible is really key, right? Because the way we talk about movement in society has conventionally been around, burning off energy, burning off calories. It's good for your physical health. It's a very one-dimensional narrative.
Yeah, it's punishment for enjoying life. That's how a lot of people think about it. I indulged, so now I have to repent.
Yeah, you mentioned punishment, but even the vernacular around movement, I'm going to kill myself in the gym. Yeah. What does that mean? We've sort of, I don't think we have realized the implications of talking about movement in this way has had, because some people will say, it's just not for me, exercise. It's just not for me, movement. What would you say to people who say that?
And mindset, influences so much of how we experience something. So I describe movement as using your body to engage with life. And I think of whether you call it movement or you call it exercise, it's really about finding an activity that allows you to engage with life the way that you want to. So maybe you love how it feels when you go for a walk in nature, or you love how it feels when you run and you feel fast and free and you can sense your own persistence. Or you love how it feels to move and flow in Tai Chi or yoga, or have dance parties in your living room with your kid. And that you use your body to engage with life, to express different aspects of your human nature, to connect with other people. And if you're experiencing movement instead as a punishment for something you ate, or an investment in your future well-being that is not connected to something you actually enjoy, it just sets people up to, first of all, find an activity that they hate. I mean, if people are obsessed with looking at their watch and seeing like these calorie counters, or counting how many steps they've taken, it's very easy to miss how powerful you feel when you lift something heavy, or how much fun it is to high-five someone after you do an exercise or go for a run. So I think we need a total mindset reset about what movement is and why we do it, so that people, first of all, are more likely to choose something that actually connects them to joy and meaning, and also so that we can sort of escape the voices in the head that often come up when you come to exercise from a place of shame or fear that's so common.
Yeah, it's really common. I thought a lot about fitness trackers over the past few years, and my view on them has sort of changed, and it does from day to day, because I kind of see them a little bit like blood pressure monitors, in the sense that some patients say, hey, doctor, shall I buy a blood pressure monitor? And for some of them, it's the best thing in the world, because they check it once a week. They use it as a way to, nudge them in the right direction. If the blood pressure is going up, they'll say, oh, you know what, I need to get back on track with my lifestyle. Whereas other people will buy it and check it 2-3 times a day, stress out every time it's a little change, and it almost becomes paralyzing. And I'm interested in your view. I guess for me, fitness trackers can potentially be a very similar thing. I do feel more and more that we have become so obsessed with what's on our wrist or what's on our phone that we've lost connection with what the movement is. Yeah. Now, I totally accept for some people it can be motivating. They're like, you know what? I've only got 6,000 steps today. I want to hit 10,000 a day. That's going to motivate me to go out. So I think it's about finding the balance somewhere. And I guess for different people, the balance is somewhere different. But what's your view on these trackers?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of, you need to conduct an experiment on yourself. So I'm always encouraging people to think about what their goal is and what their values are. And like, is this something that supports you in doing what is important to you? I think fitness trackers are often a first start for people. I have a friend recently, they're trying to motivate someone in the family to move more. So they all got one together so that they could support this one person. I like that idea of it. There's a story in my book about a woman who wanted to become active after experiencing a devastating loss. And so her husband gave her a Fitbit for Christmas, and she said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to embrace life and start moving forward. And that helped her feel like she was making some progress. And then she found a running group, and it was actually the community support of the running group that helped her get to the next stage of moving through her grief. But the Fitbit was the first start. So I feel like, for a lot of people, it's worth experimenting with. But I really agree with this idea that if you get obsessed with metrics, you might not be paying attention to your direct experience. And I think paying attention to your direct experience gives you so much feedback about, for example, when you move, do you feel better afterwards? Yeah. That is a really great metric that your counter is not going to be able to tell you. But when you found the ideal form of movement for you, you shouldn't have to recover psychologically from it. You should feel set up to walk into your home or your next meeting with a sense of, I feel more energized, I feel more optimistic, I'm like a best version of myself. And, there's no fitness tracker that's going to tell you that, but you can check in with how you feel. Yeah,
it's almost as if at the end of the run or the race or whatever, like there's such an obsession with, okay, what happened? What was my heart rate? What was this? We're actually in that moment where we could be tapping into our hearts and how we're feeling. We can be distracted by these other metrics that, frankly, we can check later as well. And maybe the take home might be for some of us is when we finish that particular movement, maybe sit with it for a minute or two. Just just how do you feel? You can check the metrics later if that's something that means a lot to you, but maybe don't do it straight away, potentially. I never like telling people what they should be doing. It's about just having, hopefully, sharing ideas that may or may not resonate.
Is it helping you experience movement in a way that you enjoy, and is it helping you stay active? And I feel like everything about the science is an experiment that you conduct on yourself. I mean, actually, the research suggests that probably trackers aren't that effective at motivating people, but it does for some people.
It does for some.
It really does.
But that's inherently the problem. I wouldn't say the problem, but that is what we see with research all the time, right? Isn't it? We look at these gross conclusions, these simplifications.
And it's always an average, and there's always a distribution, and who knows, you might be the outlier.
Yeah,
right?
and if you're someone listening to this right now, you might go, hold on a minute. I get what you're saying, Kelly, or what you're saying wrong, but ultimately, this fitness tracker on my wrist is the only thing that it's got me off the sofa, and now I run it every other day, and I love it. And the tracker made me do that and helps me do it. Fine.
Wonderful.
Yeah. You mentioned a running group. Have you heard of something called Parkrun?
Yes, of course.
Is it big here in the States?
I don't know, because I write about Good Gym in the book, and a lot of people who are participants in Good Gym also are big fans of Parkrun. So that's how I've heard it come up quite a bit from people who are running in
Parkrun is it's almost like an epidemic in the UK at the moment. It's a good epidemic. It's growing rapidly, and I actually interviewed the CEO of Parkrun on this podcast maybe a year ago. And what was really interesting is that he said, Rongan, the thing about Parkrun is that Parkrun is a social intervention masquerading as a running event.
I know. I love it. I feel the same way about the classes that I teach, that people show up thinking they're showing up for a workout, and then they have a positive experience of belonging and connection. And as I've heard from people who are part of these running groups too, that they can become a real source of social support. I mean, there's so many important dimensions of social community. They're your close relationships, your partnerships in life, your family. But it's so important to have social relationships that are a little bit casual, but where you can show up and belong, where people are happy to see you. And when you're having a bad day, they give you, just that level of support where it's okay to be who you are, and there are people who care. And it's amazing how much movement facilitates that level of connection, where you're sort of allowed to be who you are. When things are difficult, people support you in this kind of easy way that we sometimes don't find in our close relationships, where things get very complicated. And so I think that Parkrun is a great example of that. Good Gym is a great example of that. And here in the U.S., you see that a lot with CrossFit gyms and group exercise classes.
Yeah, Parkrun has transformed my weekends and my family's weekends. My son first noticed some runners in the local park maybe 3-4 years back, said, Daddy, what are they doing? Why have they all got these things on and stuff? And, that's how we got into Parkrun. And we started as, in the UK, on Saturdays as the adult Parkrun, which is a 5K run. And on the Sundays, in some areas, they have a kids Parkrun, which is a 2K run. So I think since my son was 5, we've been doing the 2K run, which, they would walk at first and they run, but now he does the adult one every Saturday. But what it's done is not only that fitness, it helps us feel part of the local community, right? And I know I've heard you on a previous podcast, you mentioned values. You mentioned one of your values has been recently, I think, to engage with your local community. Now, there's many ways you can engage with a local community, but movement is such a beautiful way to do it, because I've noticed with my kids, because they see the same people every week, they bump into the same people in the supermarket. It helps you feel that, in this increasingly disconnected and isolated world, it brings people together. And one of the central ideas in your book that I'm getting as I read it is this idea that moving together with other people helps us to cooperate and feel part of that. And that's incredible. That's a different narrative on movement than what we're conventionally being told.
I know, and it's such a needed medicine in our world right now, that kind of belonging and community. I think one of the reasons why movement and things like Parkrun or things like my dance classes help people experience that is movement often asks us to be the best version of ourselves, and also like good friends to other human beings. So, you go for a run, and it's just so natural to cheer other people on. Like if you finish first, to support other people in finishing. It's so natural to receive that support. It's like an easier place to allow yourself to be congratulated and supported. We get to practice these kind of rituals of just like easy human interdependence, which can be sometimes a little bit different than sometimes team sports. I know in the US, there's a lot of concern about people getting like so competitive with it and it bringing out maybe the worst side of parents or kids. But in things like runs and, like ninja warrior training and all these other places where people are experiencing connection, it's because like you're asked to do things that are a little bit hard. And then when you do it, people congratulate you and see your strength, and you get to do that for others. And there's this kind of bigger than self effort and bigger than self joy that people experience. That is, some psychologists call it a sense of we agency. Like you get together and you're doing something and you experience a sense of self that literally transcends like the borders of your skin and your body. You feel connected to almost like a community is like an organism in itself. I mean, it's such like we could get into the neuroscience of this, but literally if you're running in a pack or you're in a dance class and you're moving in sync with other people, your brain starts to expand its sense of awareness so that you literally can, like the people you see running in stride with you or the people you see moving in a dance class with you, your brain is like, that's happening at the same time that my brain is saying run or stretch your arm. And it just starts to assume I'm part of something bigger, an organism that's all moving as one. And it creates this amazing sense of self-transcendence.
It's incredible that, you're a trained scientist, and we can and we will go into the neuroscience and what's going on when we move. But there's another narrative at play here, isn't there? There's an almost non-scientific, almost spiritual narrative. Yeah. And I find that incredibly fascinating, the science and the spirituality together, because I think we all know that for people who do move. Before we started, you were saying that this is a love letter, isn't it? Your book, and it's going to help people who have experienced joy and improvements of their mental health when they move. It's going to help them go, yeah, this is why it happens, and I feel that as well. But there's, I spoke to someone called Sanjay Rawal on this podcast. In fact, last time I was in LA, I interviewed him here. I think you'd love that podcast, actually. He was the director on a film called 3100s, where it's this race in New York, around central New York, where they run.
Oh, yes. I think the New Yorker wrote an article about this.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I'm familiar with this.
Yeah, and it was just incredible. And these guys move around like a 1 mile block in New York City. And they do it for about 50, 60 days. They're running like over a marathon a day. Mm-hmm. And it's just incredible, but it's because it is about self-transcendence. It's about movement, I think, as a way of bringing people together. Movement as a way of, becoming greater than your individuality. And I sort of feel, I don't know, is this why movements and running and endurance events, why they're growing and they're becoming more and more popular all around the world? Have we become a disconnected, isolated society where actually we are discovering more and more now that when we push ourselves outside our comfort zone and we do, let's say, an endurance event, or we go out and challenge our bodies, it's actually having benefits for us far beyond the physical benefits, but there's mental and emotional benefits as well.
Absolutely. So, oh gosh, there's so much I want to say about this. Let me just backtrack for a second. So you mentioned I'm a scientist, and one of the things that I want to communicate is that for me, science and spirituality are not in opposition. So if you were to look at my early work, I did a lot of work looking at yoga and my research on meditation and sort of what's happening in your body and brain and what the benefits of that are. And I feel like, it's not that we need science to prove things that we can directly experience, but sometimes the science can also help us feel that sense of awe and wonder. Like when I understand that my muscles are sending proteins into my bloodstream that act to give my brain hope when they cross the blood-brain barrier, I experience a sense of awe and wonder that actually feels almost spiritual. So I feel like one of my goals is actually to help people to have almost like a religious experience around the neuroscience too. It's a phenomenal what humans are capable of. But so this idea that maybe people are experiencing in their current state of isolation or alienation and despair, the need to come together to move or to do these ultra endurance events, I think that's definitely true. And one of the things that I didn't realize until I started talking to so many people is that intensity actually matters. So one of the things that you will hear when people are being encouraged to exercise initially is you only have to do a minute. And it's true, there's no dose that's too small to get physical and mental health benefits. You could do as close to nothing, and as soon as you take a breath, as soon as you take a single squat, everything is good for you. But there does seem to be like a dose response. And for people who are dealing with mental health challenges, people who are dealing with a sense of isolation, sometimes doing things that are really hard seems to kick into gear what's happening in your brain and what happens in your sense of self and your ability to experience transcendence that you can experience while doing a marathon or an ultra marathon that maybe you're not going to experience when you first take that walk around the block. And I think that was a theme that really was revealed to me in so many stories of people who have these amazing spiritual experiences, whether they're running an ultra marathon or hiking in nature, or the first time they power lift. There was one woman in the book who had a personal best in a power lift, and you think that's hard, and she sensed her strength in such an amazing way. This was someone who was dealing with severe depression, and she decided not to take her own life. She had a plan to take her own life, and she decided she wanted to live because of that kind of spiritual and emotional experience of literally sensing a strength in herself she didn't know she had. And so one of the things that one of the messages I'm trying to give people is, don't be afraid of going beyond what you think you're capable of. If there's any part of you. So many people I talk to for this book, they're like, so the good news is we don't have to run a marathon. Like you say, 3 minutes of exercise can boost your mood. Yes, that is definitely true. And also, you might want to run a marathon. Yeah. You might even want to run an ultra marathon to have these transcendent experiences. And that's also an option.
Yeah, there's so much about movement and how we talk about it, because some people will be listening and they'll be thinking, some people will be running while they're listening to this, yeah. Right? And be going, yeah, this is why I run. This is incredible. This is what I feel like after my run. But there'll also be someone who might be listening to this while slumped on their sofa in the evening, and they hear the words ultra marathon and they're thinking, yeah, that just doesn't connect with me and my life. Yeah. Like I'm busy. I work 2 jobs. I'm exhausted. I come home and I just want to sit in front of the TV and unwind because life is tough. So to that person who struggles to even go for a 20-minute walk every day, yeah, what would you say to that person?
Well, so first of all, I often will tell people, pick a song you love because of the power of music, and then do any sort of movement that works for your body in this moment to the duration of a song you love, or a song that reminds you of someone that you love. And you do whatever movement feels accessible and positive in this moment. And people be like, well, what do you mean? Like, do I have to do exercises? You know what? Most people can figure out how to move their bodies in ways that work for them in that moment. Yeah. So it could be you stand up and stretch. It could be that you just play. Maybe you shadow box. I mean, the body has an intelligence. Maybe, so somebody who didn't actually make it into the book, but someone who, someone's story that I was really moved by was someone who literally had trouble standing because of his health challenges, and he worked up to being able to walk the hallway of his apartment, and that was a big milestone. And then he worked his way up to being able to leave his apartment and walk around the block. Thing is there's always a milestone that's within reach, and you can move with whatever parts of your body still move. So in the book, I'm visited dance classes for people with Parkinson's disease, a gym for people with severe disabilities and neurological disorders. No matter what is present in your body right now, I'm also someone who deals with chronic pain. So I understand that there can be a lot of things going on inside of you, whether it's depression or grief or anxiety or pain, that makes movement feel intimidating. And a lot of this is about self-trust, that you don't need to listen to somebody else say you have to do a minimum of 20 minutes or a minimum of an hour, or it has to be this hard. That if you set the intention to move your body with gratitude for having connection to life, that often people can innovate their own early workouts, and then you can go find a community that supports you if that's of interest to you.
Yeah, Kelly, I love that. I mean, there's so much of what you say, so much of what you write about that deeply, deeply connects with me, and which I'm so excited to be talking to you. That we've become, I mentioned I didn't like the word prescription before in this context, and I don't. And even the way we set up public health guidelines, I get it, right? I understand we have to give broad recommendations to the population. You must do 30 minutes of minimum to, moderate.
Do we though? Even, isn't it funny? Like everyone, they keep changing the recommendation. I've been a fitness professional for 20 years. The recommendations are always changing, and it seems like the recommendations, in part, it's based on research, and part it's like, oh my gosh, what can we get people to actually do? Let's change the recommendations. Maybe they'll do it. If they know they only have to do it in 5 to 10 minute increments and it doesn't have to be all at once, maybe then they'll do it.
And maybe,
and it's like,
maybe fundamentally the guy, maybe like
the guideline is move. That's it.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do, whatever you're willing to do.
Yeah, and as controversial as this potentially is, maybe guidelines might be part of the problem, because we are making it too prescriptive, too didactic, that this is what we, the body, the public health body, or the government say you should be doing each day, right? And fundamentally, I don't think anyone likes to be told what to do long term, but B, I really love what you said, like when I asked you, what will you say to that person who doesn't want to move or thinks it's not for them? Everyone likes me. There's always a song that somebody likes on some level, right? Yeah. It may not be your taste, it may not be my taste.
Music, it might be nature, right? So there's so many movement. So the other thing, I usually start with a song, but there's some people who don't love to move to music. So think about something that you already love, and then think of an activity that allows you to do that. So, if you love animals and maybe you don't have a pet, you can't have a pet because of where you live or your circumstances. Do you know how many animal shelters will let you volunteer to take a dog for a walk or a run? Maybe there's a person you want to spend time with. Maybe they love an activity and you could choose to do it with them. Do you know how much that strengthens a relationship when you endorse an activity that someone else loves and they feel like it's their best self, and you're like, okay, I'll go to that yoga class with you? There's a lot of ways to think about who and what you already enjoy. And I think that rather than thinking of durations and intensities, 30 minutes must be moderate, people don't even know what that means. I think that we should view movement as being as essential to human survival as eating and sleeping. You don't say, I'll do it once on the weekend. It's part of how you live your life. And if you can find ways to make it part of your life so that it's not a chore, it's an activity you love, so maybe it's part of your recreation, or it's part of how you get about your life. You run errands by cycling or walking, or it's how you connect with people in your life. If you're going to spend 20 minutes with your partner or with your kid, why not make that a movement, since we know that the neurochemistry of movement helps us bond and connect with others? Yeah. And I really think this idea that it's something that you're shoving into your life that's divorced from your life is one of the reasons people don't actually do it.
Yeah, doing it with other people, I think, is really fascinating, because I hear that and I reflect on my own circumstances and what I have chosen to do with my family. So if I take my kids, for example, I do park running with my son. And it's one of the favorite things I do every week, because we go out together and we share that experience together, and then we walk back afterwards and we're chatting, and it's I know 10, 15 years down the line I'll look back on these things with real fond memories. It's a fun thing that we do together.
I have a fond memory of doing Sweating to the Oldies in my living room with my mom.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because that was the only workout video she would do with me, because it was songs from her youth.
Yeah.
But I cherish that memory.
Yeah.
And one of the things I also want to recommend to anyone listening who's thinking about this is how much we can connect over shared music. And so if you're doing that with someone else, saying what song should we put on next, and letting your kid choose it.
Yeah.
that's so empowering to them. I mean, I mentioned like go to a class with, so if someone in your life, loves yoga and they're always talking about it, go to it with them. Not just to have a shared experience, but you are honoring something about them. When you move with other people and you let them pick the playlist or the activity, you're like saying, I see you, I value you, I see this part of you. And that's a really meaningful thing. But of course, there's all this research too that moving together is like, when primates groom one another and we get that shared endorphin rush. And eating together does the same thing too. So it's a great thing to put together.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't stop thinking about that whole societal narrative piece, that whole idea of prescribing movement, telling people what movement counts as part of their movements. And as if it doesn't count unless it's got a particular name, right? What do you do? Oh, I do yoga, or I do Pilates. Hold on a minute. Why do we have to name it? Or I do spinning. It's like, well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? All three of those things are fantastic if that's what makes you tick. But this is something I can't shake off at the moment. It's this thought that we've got movement all wrong. We talk about it all wrong. We put people off. We make them think they have to go to a gym at a particular time with a particular outfit on, when basically what you're saying is it's a fundamental part to be a human.
Yes.
Is to move.
And think about it. I mean, even if you're thinking of movement as medicine, so your quadriceps don't really care if you are squatting and lifting things because you're gardening, or you're squatting and lifting things in a gym because a coach is telling you do this now. Your quadriceps just know, I need to exert strength, I need to use energy, and any good that comes from that squat, whether it's changing your mood or releasing these myokines that protect your health, it's going to happen because you're moving your body. And your quadriceps aren't tracking, did you do it exactly 20 times for exactly this many repetitions? Your body and your brain just know, I'm engaging with life. And like all the benefits that come from movement, it's about using energy, using your muscles, using as much of your body as you can. And that's when your brain and body reward you. And it is, we don't need some of this other stuff unless it lights you up.
Movement is life, isn't it? It's life because everything is movement. Breathing is your diaphragm and your lungs moving.
Talking, communicating is movement. Facial expressions are movement.
So actually, every single person listening to this podcast right now practices movement on a daily basis, whether they think they do or not, because talking, even pressing play on the podcast app or on YouTube, you are moving to do that. So I guess...
So think about expanding your repertoire. So if you're someone who thinks you don't like exercise, well, you already know how to move your arm, right? To scroll through your phone. So, exercise or movement is just, okay, well, what's the full range of motion? And that's sort of what we're meant to do. And again, that you can do it with whatever body you have. And one of the experiences I had in researching the book that was really moving for me was going to this class for people with Parkinson's disease, where every level of movement is impaired. And so, we're used to thinking of Parkinson's disease as it's harder to walk, or maybe there's a tremor in my gestures. But as it advances, one of the things you see is that it becomes harder to connect with your face, that it becomes harder to make facial expressions that let you know. For example, it's harder for me to smile and connect so that I'm happy to see you. And one of the things I witnessed in this class is that in part it was the music, and then using your body in whatever degree you can, getting the motor system of the brain fired up, getting that extra bit of dopamine was allowing people to also socially connect more powerfully. So by the end of class, people who came in, it's sometimes called the mask of Parkinson's disease. They come in and people look like they're not there, but they're there, but it's just they can't show it. And by the end of the class, people were able to shake hands and hug and express joy. And that's actually how we ended the class. Everyone, one at a time, was asked to express joy and give it to the group, and then we all got to receive it. We went around in a circle. And I think people sometimes underestimate how much when you move your body, you don't have to have Parkinson's disease for this to be true. You are enhancing your capacity to engage with life in the ways that humans need to connect and to have positive action in the world. And like movement is that catalyst that whatever needs to happen in you, whether you need to find your courage, movement can activate that. Whether you need to find hope, movement can activate that. And it allows us to be present in every role and relationship that matters to us.
movement helps us engage with life. I love that, because as a doctor, I see a lot of people who are starting to disengage with life. People with mental health problems, people who really struggle, with day-to-day things, day-to-day activities. And, in the book, you beautifully go through a lot of the research around this, about how being sedentary in itself will make you low and depressed. And I think there's a statistic, if I remember it right, that the amount of steps you need to take on a daily basis in order to not get anxious or depressed, so something like this, is 5,649.
Yeah, so let me explain what the study is. So this was a study that took people who were a little bit more active than your average American, not like super exercisers. I think they were averaging something like 9,000 steps a day when they started the study. And then they asked them to reduce their daily step count to what is typical for the average American, so around 5,000, and to not exercise. So like if you have the chance to exercise on purpose, don't. And in this study, after about a week of reducing your activity count to the average American, they actually only got to about whatever that number was you said. It was just over 5,000. 88% of people were reporting symptoms of depression. Nearly everyone had less energy, more anxiety, more stress. They reported a 31% decrease in meaning in life. And so, the way that I take that study, and there are other studies showing this too. So
can I just clarify? So you're saying these are active people,
relatively active people.
Okay, so they're roughly getting 9,000 steps a day. When they go down to around 5,500,
which actually is not just the American average, that's pretty much the worldwide average.
So they go down, and you're saying there was a stat, I think you just mentioned, 88% of them are feeling depressed.
Yes. And they're reporting a decrease in meaning in life and satisfaction with life.
And so this is fundamentally exactly what you're talking about. Movement is engaging with life. Stop moving and you start to disengage with life. To make sure you're taking action after watching this video, I've created a free guide to help you build healthy habits. We can all make short-term change, but can those changes become a fundamental part of our life? Often they don't. And that's why in this free guide, I share with you the 6 crucial steps you need to take. They're really, really effective. If you want to get hold of that free guide right now, all you have to do is click the link in the description box below.
So I do think that study suggests it's possible that the lifestyle that is becoming more prevalent around the world is actually inducing depression and a decrease in satisfaction in life. I mean, we can talk about why, but there are many reasons that when you become less active, you're changing your metabolism, you're changing your brain chemistry, and you're changing your mood in such profound ways that some people think there's a very large incidence of depression that is caused simply from being sedentary. That's not always going to be the cause, and movement won't always be the cure. But a certain amount of suffering in society may actually be directly caused by the fact that people are living such sedentary lives.
Yeah, I spoke to the researcher, Brendan Stubbs.
Yes, I love his work.
Yeah, I think it came out a few weeks ago. People loved it because he spoke about a lot of the research on movement and depression. Yeah. And a lack of movement can actually start to make some people, and again, none of us are trying to say it covers everything, but for some people it's going to certainly make a difference. And I think we kind of intuitively know that. If anyone's got kids, you will know this feeling. Like if in the UK, certainly if it's raining all weekends and the kids are inside and they start to play up and their mood goes off, simply 10 minutes outside in the garden in the rain, and they're like different people.
But it's also how it changes your brain. So one of the things I write about in the book, I actually did some self-diagnosis. So I found a lot of research suggesting that there are genetic variants that predispose you both to depression and anxiety, as well as predispose you to experiencing the antidepressant effects of movement. So you could basically have genetic risk factors for mental health challenges that make you especially susceptible to the mental health benefits of exercise. So, one study was looking at this particular SNP, this particular genetic variant, that if you have it, you're something like 3 times more likely to experience depression and suicidal thinking. But if you exercise for 30 minutes a day, it almost completely erases that risk. Wow. And so I found a whole bunch of these genetic variants, and I did my 23andMe test, hacked my raw data because my husband is a medical scientist and he helped me out with this. And I have every single genetic variant that is associated with both the increased risk and the increased mental health benefit. And so I feel like sometimes when we talk about how exercise can be an antidepressant, yeah, of course it's true that most people feel better when they exercise, but also it's the case that you can be like me and be born with a temperament and this vulnerability to experience mental health challenges, and exercise can change the function of your brain, can change even the structure of your brain in ways that make you more resilient. And if you are going through an episode of depression, that can help you recover more quickly, and that even enhances your brain's ability to respond positively to things like antidepressant medication or psychotherapy. We know that exercise, it's like an additive, it's like a catalyst that increases your brain plasticity for anything that's good for you, whether it's a drug that you're taking for your mental health or a therapist that you're seeing. And so I feel like that's at a very deep level, exercise is good for mental health. And one of the reasons I like to talk about this is because, for people who have that vulnerability or have that experience, when you're in it, you don't want to move. When you're in it, your brain, it's such like almost a betrayal. If you're in the middle of a depressive episode or grief, your brain will not give you the immediate reward. And so here we can be talking about an endorphin rush or the feel better effect. But if you're actually in a depressive episode or you're grieving, it is very possible that your brain has forgotten how to give you an endorphin rush from movement. And what I want so much for people to know is that that is true. And also, movement is one of the only things you can do that helps your brain remember how to experience reward and hope. And sometimes you have to get through that part of the process where you are moving even though you don't want to, and even though you're like, brain, you were supposed to give me an endorphin rush and I barely got through it. And to know that exercise has such a profound impact on your brain in the long term, that if you can get through that, your experience changes.
You mentioned that genetic susceptibility and that you had all of them when you looked at the data.
Which didn't surprise me. I told my parents that, and my mom was like, not surprised.
Yeah, but
Yes.
what's interesting for me is that you are someone who has had this very passionate relationship with movement, it sounds like your entire life.
Yeah.
Now, I'm interested when that started, but also I'm interested as to now knowing that genetic data, do you think back on reflection that you figured out at a young age, when
yes.
I move, I feel better, and when I don't, I don't feel good, and therefore that has shaped your behaviors for the rest of your life, basically?
Yes. So I'm sure now, if I were growing up now and I was the child I was then, somebody would have thought to send me to therapy. But growing up, I was born in the 70s, growing up, late 70s, 80s, kids weren't going to therapy, at least not where I lived. Nobody was being prescribed mental health drugs. So it was sort of left to me to figure out what to do with a temperament. I mean, from the time I was out of the womb, I was basically scared, anxious, fearful. There was nothing to explain it except this is how my brain worked from the time I was born. And also, I was not an athlete. So one thing I've been saying lately, which is surprising people who know me now, I actually was put in remedial gym class because I was so uncoordinated and slow. There were like 2 of us who were pulled out of our normal class because we just couldn't keep up. We couldn't, I can't catch a ball. It was humiliating actually at the time.
Yeah.
And when I was 7 or 8, there was this wave of aerobics and calisthenics, and I discovered moving at home because my mom would go to these garage sales and buy workout tapes and never do them. She was like, oh, I'm going to become an exerciser, and she never did. But we would have these VHS tapes at home. And so I started doing calisthenics and aerobics at home, and it was a totally different form of movement. So nobody was throwing things at me. Nobody was timing how fast I could go. It was me keeping beat with music and other people's bodies. And I fell in love with jazzercise. And it was the first time I didn't feel like my body was this embarrassing burden that I was dragging around, unable to do the things that other kids could do. And then over years, started when I was 7 or 8, realizing how much it helped me deal with stress and anxiety. Yeah. But I needed to find the movement that I could do too. And we're not all natural born runners. We're not all natural born athletes, but I do believe that there's something in everyone that can be captured, tapped into by some form of movement.
There's quite a few things, Kelly, I want to pick up on there. You mentioned something that was quite humiliating. So at a young age, I'm just trying to imagine, you're the kids who, let's say, you're not getting picked for the team because you're always the last one to get picked, or you're saying that you and somebody else got pulled out of class because you're not coordinating enough to continue with the rest of your peers. That is torture at that age, to feel. And I guess what I'm getting at is there a difference between men and women in this? We've already mentioned the societal narrative around movement and how, if you can't do what your peers can do and you feel humiliated and you're not part of that group, you might change your relationship with movement for the rest of your life.
There is research on this now. So the research now is looking at, people like our age and older, many of whom had traumatic experiences in gym class or PE. I don't know what it's like in the UK now, but in the US, actually, it's not even required. There are schools now where you don't necessarily have to even take gym or PE.
So that you're not humiliated?
No, just because there's not funding. It's like we don't have art and music class everywhere also now. But I think there's a big shift right now in trying to create less humiliating and traumatizing experiences, because this research shows that if you were picked last, if you have a memory of being shamed because of your body or any other reason that you didn't fit in, there's lots of reasons that kids have been humiliated in sports or gym classes, that it makes you want to avoid movement and exercise for the rest of your life.
So based on that, if you were to give advice to schools, there's a lot of schools, head teachers and teachers who listen to this podcast. Based upon that research then, have you got any advice for them in terms of how they should frame movement and talk about it and manage it at schools? Because you don't want to shape these kids the rest of their life. You don't want to alter their relationship with movement negatively if you can help it.
I mean, and there are a lot of people doing this work, by the way, I should say. A lot of people trying to improve that gym class experience. One thing is autonomy, that people should have choices to identify movements that help them, reduce stress and feel better and connect with others. The most positive experiences I ever had in a gym class was when we were given permission to just walk around and talk to our friends. I got more activity doing that than when I was hiding on a field being like, cover me, I hope the ball doesn't come to me because I don't know how to play the sport and I don't want to get hurt. A weightlifting circuit, to be able to do it on your own and choose what you do and how you do it. So to give people a sense of autonomy and to allow people to connect. And the other positive experience I had, for whatever reason, one year, my last year in high school, the gym class instructors decided to allow you to choose into what they called competitive or non-competitive. And we were literally put in different rooms. They put the binders up to close the rooms. And if you opted into non-competitive, everyone was agreeing, we all aren't any good at this and we don't care and we're going to find a way to make it fun. And I realized that I could hit a volleyball for the first time in my life because I wasn't hiding in the back with the competitive players being like, don't let her touch the ball, she's going to drop it. And it was such an amazing experience because none of us cared. And so we were able to play in a different way. So I just think giving people choice, letting people opt into, are you the athlete who wants to use this time to compete and get better and train? Or do you want to just have fun with your friends? Or do you want to be by yourself? Could you let kids listen to music on their headphones and strength train and have that time for themselves? Have it look more like what adults get to do when they choose their own movement.
The reason I'm asking about men and women is because there is, I can't remember the exact name, I think the BBC in the UK have a movement like This Girl Can.
I've seen that.
Yeah, there's some videos. So I think
Australia has that too.
Yeah, it's an awareness. And again, I don't know the exact roots of this. So my interpretation of this is that there is a lot of people saying that girls, as they get older, don't particularly, and this is a gross generalization, are maybe too self-conscious to move. They're not moving enough. And it's a movement to try and encourage more girls, more women to get moving. Yeah. Now, I think they're targeting this at women because it seems to be more of an issue with women than guys. Has any of your research come across anything like that? And do you have any views on why that might be?
So, and this, you especially see this during adolescence and young adulthood, when women experience their bodies being objectified so much for the first time. I think of one of my friend's daughters who stopped going for a run. She loved running, and all of a sudden she hit adolescence and she started getting catcalls, and she didn't feel safe, and she stopped running. So I think that part of it is suddenly you realize that everyone has an opinion about your body. You go to the gym and people will, even praise can feel quite threatening and unwanted, or you'll get negative comments from people. And that sense of suddenly your body is an object that everyone is evaluating is, I think, one of the things that keeps women from participating in all sorts of activities. There definitely is a cultural movement, though, for women to embrace their strength, embrace their power, embrace their inner athlete or dancer, and to move in any way that feels good. And I think that one of the things I often will talk to fitness professionals about is how important it is to design environments and communities so that if you're walking in for the first time, you understand that you are welcomed and celebrated and not immediately objectified by let's take your before picture, or, let's take your measurements, or the kind of things that can put people in that mindset of, oh, right, my body is an object that's being evaluated, as opposed to this is an opportunity to experience my own strength.
Yeah. I guess the more we talk and the more I think about what you're saying, it's very hard not to shake off this idea that ultimately movement is very personal. And we cannot be, and it's not ideal to be prescribing the same form of movement to everyone, that ultimately we've all got to figure out that, yes, it's a fundamental human quality, not quality, quality is the wrong word. It is what it means to be human, is to move, right? And therefore, if we haven't found that type of movement yet that we love, maybe we need to go on that search for that type of movement that we love.
And trust that it could actually be meaningful. I feel like so often people look for the most convenient form of exercise. Like, I think there's a treadmill somewhere in my office building and I'll go and put in my time. But I sometimes ask people, if someone were to send you a video, on YouTube, what's the video of movement that you would actually watch and be inspired by? Do you want to see people run an obstacle course? Do you want to see people cross a finish line? Do you want to watch that choreography video? What is it that lights you up when you see other people do it? And maybe even there's a voice in your head that says, I could never do that. That's the activity to move toward, because it can change how you feel about yourself and what you believe is possible for your future. And again, to experiment and to listen to your direct feedback and to follow any thread of joy. I often will tell people who come to my classes for the first time, if you have a moment in this class where you were like, oh, I see what this could be, then this class is for you, and come back. Because any movement form, this was so great. Movement is it's a mastery and growth experience. We will pretty much always get better at it, and we will always enjoy it more the more we do it.
You mentioned that people often do the kind of movements that they just have access to. So there's a treadmill in the block, and it's going, put in my time. Now, isn't that an interesting phrase, put in my time? Because when I'm traveling, I don't really go to gyms much. It's just, I don't really have time, and I've found ways to move my body that doesn't require me to go to a gym. But sometimes I'm in hotels, and I will, if I'm up early, I'll go to the hotel gym just to see what's going on and maybe lift some weights or do something. And it's really interesting. You often see people in there who they look as though they're trying to block out the fact that they're moving. It looks as though this is a torturous process for me. Someone's told me, or I feel I have to be on this treadmill for an hour. So I'm going to do everything I can to numb that experience, whether it's read the newspaper, watch the news, watch Netflix. Now, look, I am not being critical here. I'm just saying what I observe. And I guess sometimes we feel we need to block out the movements that, we feel we have to move, but we hate it, so we block it out. Now, I'm wondering, is there any research to show that there's a difference? Let's say you're on the treadmill and you're engaged with that, and you're feeling, how you feel, your limbs are moving, and how, what's going on in your brain, and you're sort of processing your emotions, versus blocking it off completely, so you're numbing that experience. Does that movement do something different from the body in those two different examples?
Yeah. So if you are so there's such a thing as positive dissociation during exercise. And for some people, it's actually really important. So one of the things we know is that your brain changes when you go from being inactive to active, that it changes in ways that makes movement not only easier, but more pleasurable. So when people first start to exercise, it often is an aversive experience. It doesn't stay that way for most people, but maybe you have to go 6 weeks of doing regular activity for your brain to start to really reward you for it. So in that time, positive dissociation can be really helpful. That's different than like watching the news and getting angry or scrolling through and answering emails. That's where something like music can come into play, or watching something really exciting on Netflix. And there's research suggesting that if you can combine movement with something you love that is engaging, that it can actually help you stick to movement, have a more positive memory of it. But ultimately, if you can experience a state of flow in movement, that's more rewarding for most people. And it can take some time to find that. But that requires paying some attention to what you're feeling in your body, using it as information to guide your effort, enjoying sensations of feedback from your muscles and your joints and your heart that tell you, I'm alive and I'm doing this, and this is how it feels to lift something heavy or to exert myself in this way. And often that's how you found the right workout for you, where you can find a flow in it, where you don't feel like you need to distract yourself from it.
Yeah.
And you can find a flow in anything. Like it can be, it's not like you can only find it in some traditionally meditative experience like yoga or Tai Chi. People find their flow in all sorts of movement forms. There's so much of it that's personality, and so much about what your body kind of was built for. I talked to a lot of people who told me they thought they hated exercise until they found, and then fill in the blank. And maybe it was rowing or swimming. Like some people need to get in the water, and they have a totally different experience of movement in their bodies. Yeah. Some people needed to get outdoors. And because of the way that nature changes your brain activity and your mood, suddenly they can find a flow walking or jogging outdoors that they could never find on a treadmill. And again, for me, it's music. Anything can become enjoyable if I have the right playlist.
We've used the terms movement and exercise a lot during this conversation so far. Can we use those terms interchangeably? Or are they actually different things?
They do mean different things technically. I love the word exercise. I'm not scared of it. So movement is using your body to engage with life. It's almost everything, right? We talked about it. Me talking right now is technically movement. Exercise is often defined as moving your body for the purpose of the activity that you're doing. I am running because I want to run, not because someone is chasing me. I am dancing because I want to dance, not because someone is paying me to perform on a stage, right? I'm lifting heavy things because I want to lift heavy things, not because I'm moving from one apartment to another and I have to lift heavy things. That's what exercise is. It's movement that you are choosing to do for its own sake because of its meaning, its pleasure, or its benefits to you. So I think too many people define exercise as forcing yourself to do movement you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And that's not what it is.
Yeah, by that definition, exercise is not a helpful term, but by your definition, it can be a very helpful term.
Yeah.
Do different forms of movement do different things? And what I mean by that is we've got in the common vernacular a term, the runner's high, right? So I know you've written about this. I'd love to expand a bit on what that runner's high is and why everyone might not feel it. But also, I do like to run, but I also sometimes like to lift heavy weights. And I know if I had done a heavy deadlift, and as I'm walking out of the gym, I don't know, you feel strong, you feel powerful, you feel like you feel like a different person walking out than the person you felt like walking in. So what is going on there? What is changing in your body? What is the runner's high? What are these endorphins that everyone talks about? Because as I read your book, Kelly, I more and more feel that reducing movement down to simply being about an endorphin high is far too simplistic.
Yeah. So different forms of movement can affect your mood in two different ways. You will get different changes in your brain chemistry based on what you're doing. And also, every movement form has its own qualities. So you talked about feeling strong or powerful or confident. And every movement form will bring something else out in you. And so part of how movement makes you feel is what it is that it asks you to express. Are you expressing your determination, your playfulness and creativity, your ability to cooperate with others? But the other part is actually different movement forms will lead to different changes in what's happening in your brain. So you mentioned the runner's high. I call it a persistence high because it's a common effect in your brain when you get your heart rate up a little bit and you're using your muscles to use energy for about 20 minutes at a moderate intensity. And it really is about continuous movement rather than about running specifically. It's just that running, because it's so continuous, jogging actually is even a better way to get a runner's high than running. It basically tells your brain, we're doing this, and so I need a payoff to help me continue doing it. And you can get this basic high from anything that puts your body in motion and you're willing to commit to it for about 20 minutes. And it's driven, it seems to be driven not mostly by endorphins. To get a true endorphin rush from movement, you typically need to add one of three things: more intensity, other people, or music. And if you add those, you can get an endorphin rush from pretty much any type of movement. But the classic runner's high is fueled by endocannabinoids, which as a brain chemical is different than endorphins in a way that I think is really interesting. So we know that endorphins tend to basically block pain and create euphoria, which is why, by the way, with the right playlist or when you're moving with other people, that can really make you feel euphoric, because that will really give you an endorphin rush, or pushing yourself to fatigue. But endocannabinoids, what they do is whatever's going on in your brain that we would think of as unpleasant, it starts to dampen it down. So endocannabinoids are basically, they modulate other systems of the brain. So if you've got pain, physical pain, if you've got stress, anxiety, anger, higher levels of endocannabinoids are basically going to calm those things down in your brain. And endocannabinoids also facilitate anything that is pleasurable. So anything good that's happening, it's going to amp up. And one of the things that it particularly seems to amp up is the pleasures of social connection. So when endocannabinoid levels are higher, everything that's pleasurable is more pleasurable, but like your story is more interesting. Your jokes are funnier. If you give me a high five, it's going to feel more satisfying. Or if you give me a hug, it's going to feel better. Or if I'm able to help you, I'm going to get more of that helper's high, that warm glow. And I think that's really interesting because, right, so endorphins make you feel really good. It's like a high. But the runner's high is more about sort of putting you into a brain state that allows you to be a good version of yourself in community. And there's a lot of like anthropological speculation about why that would be. But the idea is basically human beings, we are adapted to be physically active and cooperate in communities. And as soon as you are moving your body and getting your heart rate up, your brain is like, oh, right, we're hunting, we're foraging, we're gathering. And then we need to bring it back to our tribe, and we need to share with one another. And we need to feel good about the fact that I just, spent 2 hours out in the field gathering food, and now I'm giving it away to other people so that they can eat. And that's what the runner's high is. It's a brain state that allows you to sustain optimism and effort, and that makes you enjoy connecting with other people even more. And this is why exercise is like the best reset you can do for yourself. Because just imagine, like, every time you exercise, you're becoming that version of yourself.
I mean, I'm blown away listening to this, Kelly. It's putting a lot of the pieces together that people kind of intuitively feel, but you're giving some of those mechanisms and some of the science behind why they feel the way that they feel. I love looking at things through an evolutionary lens, and it makes sense when you look at it. Why would it cause these things in the body? Yeah, it would bring us together. It would help us with our tribe, with our community. In fact, one of my favorite bits in the book is when you talk about the Hadza tribe, and what goes on, and then how much they move per day, and also how their elderly tend to move. They tend to move more as they get older, I think I read.
Yeah, you continue to be an active part of your community. This is one of the last hunter-gatherer societies, and I think the research is that they are moderately to vigorously active for a couple hours a day. That's like that higher intensity activity. And then another couple of hours of sort of lighter to moderate activity, like walking around. And the evolutionary idea is that this is how humans survived. We were willing to exert ourselves because the climate changed and humans had to do that in order to feed themselves. And we were willing to cooperate and share. And, one of the themes of the research as I experienced it and in talking to people is that they are so connected. The rewards that we get from playing an active role in our lives, literally active, being engaged, exerting ourselves, pursuing meaningful goals, and the rewards that we get from connecting with other people and being part of a community, they are so connected that it's one of the reasons why people who are physically active are less lonely. They have better relationships with other people. There's something about being sedentary that makes it more difficult to be that version of ourselves that thrives in community. And I don't mean, I don't want to shame anyone who doesn't exercise or feels like they can't for physical or mental health reasons. And yet at the same time, I feel like it's really important to express this message that to whatever degree you can move your body, it makes you a different version of yourself that it's not even just better for other people. It allows you to experience that core human joy of interdependence.
Yeah. I mean, Kelly, we've both written books on stress, and we know very well that exercise helps make us more resilient to stress. And, one of the things I loved reading about in the book was how those areas of the brain that help us manage stress, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, have got relatively high concentrations for endocannabinoids.
Yes, and oxytocin, which is something else that can get released from exercise. Yeah, so how exercise helps us with stress, it is both on that short term. So if you're feeling stressed out, you're feeling anxious or angry, it's going to change your brain chemistry in a way that gives you more hope and more energy. That's the common denominator. That's the feel better effect. But also we know that people who are regularly active, it actually changes the structure and the function of their brains in ways that basically teaches the brain how to be resilient to stress and also more sensitive to joy. So you're going to have an increased availability of dopamine and endocannabinoid and endorphin receptors. Your brain is basically going to say, oh, I guess we can experience joy and meaning in life and hope and optimism. So let's just be ready for it in a way that increases people's mood and joy in a much more generalized way. But the one thing I wanted to make sure we talk about, I mentioned it once, myokines, which I think is the most exciting area of research in terms of how exercise affects stress resilience and mental health, is this new observation. And forgive me, I don't know if you've talked about this on your podcast yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay, great. Let me be the one who gives the good news. So just in the last decade or so, biologists have realized that our muscles are basically an endocrine organ. And just like your pituitary gland, your adrenal glands, they can synthesize and pump out proteins and peptides into your bloodstream that affect every system of your body. So your muscles will manufacture these proteins and peptides, and they basically release them into your bloodstream when you contract your muscles in a regular and continuous way. So any form of exercise, any form of movement. And some of these proteins and these chemicals, so they're called myokines, which just means set into motion by your muscles. Some of them kill cancer cells. Some of them reduce inflammation. Some of them are good for your immune function. They're good for your cardiovascular health. Some of them help you regulate blood sugar. So a lot of scientists now think myokines are the reason that exercise is good for your health and prevents every kind of disease. It reduces your risk. I mean, we're all going to get something, but reduces your risk. But what I'm so fascinated by as a psychologist is some of these myokines have their strongest effects on your brain. So let's say you go for a walk or you're lifting weights and your muscles are pumping these chemicals out into your bloodstream that can cross your blood-brain barrier. And in your brain, their primary effect is to act as an antidepressant and to change the structure of your brain in ways that make you more resilient to stress, whether that's changes to your hippocampus or your prefrontal cortex. And some of the first researchers who wrote about this called them hope molecules. Because they're like, but well, in part, it's for these horrible studies that I don't particularly endorse, where you traumatize rodents, and then you either have them exercise or you literally inject them with some of these myokines. And what you find is they don't become traumatized and depressed psychologically in the way that they normally would if you traumatize them. And so they're like, it's like your muscles are manufacturing hope molecules when you exercise. And this to me is like the miracle of the human form. The idea that your muscles can manufacture antidepressants and they will deliver them to your brain when you exercise. And it's all of your muscles. So if you can't use your legs, you can use your arms. If you can't use your arms, maybe you can brace your core. If you can move any muscles, your muscles will release these chemicals that support your health and support your brain resilience. And it's something that you can choose, even if you don't have access to other forms of mental health care. Yeah. It's miraculous, and that your muscles know how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I tell you what popped into my head. I was thinking about elderly people who maybe are immobile and are sat down for a lot of the day and maybe have lost their balance. I'm thinking, well, maybe they can have a couple of light dumbbells next to their chair. And yeah, maybe their legs aren't working, but maybe if every day they at some point, for 5-10 minutes, just rock out a few bicep curls, you're going to be releasing those myokines. You're going to be getting those hope molecules. You're going to be having all these changes to your mood, your physiology, your inflammation.
And the literal structure of your brain. I mean, you literally are building a different brain.
Yeah, so to really try and think about making this accessible to everyone, even people who maybe are sedentary, might be able to do something like that to get some of these benefits. And I think that's incredibly empowering for people.
Yeah. And I've been really curious about this because a lot of the early research was looking at higher intensity exercise and athletes. And there does seem to be a bit of a dose-response relationship where anything you do is going to release these positive myokines. Any form of movement. When you go from zero to anything, this is why I think we know that people who move for 10 minutes a day have reduced risk of mortality. It's everything counts. And also, the more you do, the longer you do it, and the harder it is, the more your muscles release myokines. And I think this explains why a lot of people who are recovering from addiction, recovering from depression, recovering from grief, recovering from stroke, because of how it enhances your brain's ability to recover, many people find that actually intensity is like upping your dose of a medicine that's really good for you. And I feel like it's important to point both of those out because I can't tell you how many people I spoke to who needed to find for themselves a certain level of intensity that was almost like a switch was flipped in their psychological well-being. And so this is that, in the great tradition of improv, it's yes and. Yes, do anything and it will help you. And also, to the degree that you are choosing to push to the level of intensity that challenges you, you can really have dramatic changes in your mental health and your brain health.
Yeah, incredible. Really, really incredible. Kelly, I know you do have to get a flight shortly. We have a bit of time, and there's no way I could have a conversation with you and not talk about compassion.
Oh, yes.
So I know you've done a lot of research in this area. You studied it for a while, and compassion and kindness in general is something I think a lot about. I think about what is needed more today than ever in the world is kindness. I feel we're missing it, we're lacking it. Social media seems to seems to give people free rein to sort of be slightly anonymous and behave in a way that we would never behave with people face to face. And as I try and promote compassion and think that it's one of the most important things that we can do. If we want to be the change that is out there in the world, we need to start being compassionate in all of our interactions. And I'm wondering how exercise plays into compassion, because we're a sedentary world now. We sit down all day. We sit down on transport. We don't need to move to get our food. We can order food on our phones now. The way we're living as human beings has changed fundamentally. And if being sedentary can make us depressed and anxious, well, can being sedentary also make us lacking in compassion and make us angry and make us want to attack people? And maybe movement, increasing our movement, is going to help us be a bit more compassionate to ourselves, but to the world around us.
I mean, it definitely can, for reasons both biochemical and psychological and social. So there are a lot of barriers to compassion. First of all, is being the recipient of compassion and social safety. So, when we talk about the world becoming less compassionate, it's not because there's something like deeply broken about individuals. We know that human beings have competing instincts. We have tremendous courage and willingness to be kind and to help others. And also, we have very strong instincts to protect ourselves, to be wary of strangers, to avoid suffering and conflict. And so what compassion often requires of us is to feel safe, to feel cared for, and to feel brave. And so one of the ways that exercise can help us access our compassion and kindness is to give us experiences of our own strength and courage. So for example, one of my longtime meditation teachers focuses on compassion meditation. And I was so surprised to find out that she does kickboxing. You would think that's really strange. She's a Zen meditation teacher and she does kickboxing. But she often talks about, compassion is about active engagement with things that are difficult. So what better way to tap into your own compassionate instinct than to feel fierce and brave and strong and powerful and know how to use energy? So sometimes exercise allows us to deepen our compassion just by allowing ourselves to trust ourselves, to be able to channel and harness energy, and also to feel more connected to others, to the degree that movement gives you a community of belonging, that movement changes your brain chemistry in ways that literally makes eye contact feel safer. Exercise can make it feel easier to receive the help and kindness of others. I talked to a lot of people in this book who found through movement the first place where it felt safe to acknowledge your own vulnerabilities and receive the help of others. And when you can experience what it's like to receive the kindness of others, it also makes you more willing to extend that to others. So it's very complicated in ways that I think are almost always, and we started this conversation talking about an upward spiral. I think that if you set the intention, if you say that my movement practice is part of how I want to cultivate deeper self-compassion and compassion, I'm not sure it will always do it. But if you have that as one of your intentions, there are so many ways that movement can support your desire to be a more compassionate force in the world.
Yeah, Kelly, I love it. I wish we had another 2 hours to keep talking because, there is just so much to tap into here. I think you've written a wonderful book. I really do. I think, I hope everyone listening to this goes out and buys the book. I think it's brilliant. I think if you are someone who loves to move, I think it's going to show you why. It's going to make you want to wax lyrical about it and tell more people. But I actually also believe that if you are someone who struggles with movements, I actually do believe that by reading this book, it's going to help, I think, inspire someone to go, hey, you know what? Maybe I've been looking at this all wrong. Maybe actually I'm just going to start by putting on one of my favorite tunes and seeing how I want to move in the comfort of my own room with nobody watching. I'm just going to get moving and see what kind of ripple effect, what kind of upward spiral might be able to start and that individual's life. So I want to thank you for that, Kelly. I want to thank you for making time to come and see me today. Kelly, this podcast is called Feel Better, Live More, right? So when we feel better in ourselves, we get more out of our lives. And you've very beautifully made the case that when we move more, we're going to get more out of our lives. We've covered lots of different things today, but I always love to lead the listener with some really practical tips, things that they can think about applying in their own life immediately. Not next week, not next month, but immediately to start transforming the way that they feel. So there are a lot of different kinds of people who listen to this podcast, but I wonder, have you got some pearls of wisdom to finish off this conversation?
Yeah, so if you are thinking about adding movement into your life, one thing I like people to think about is that it is a reset. It's an immediate reset for your mood and your brain chemistry. And so to think about when in your life you want to flip that switch and get a reset and like set an appointment for yourself to move. For me, because of my temperament, like I wake up anxious. I don't wake up like, birds singing. I wake up, I'm like, oh, bleep, I have to get up and do this again. So for me, I exercise first thing in the morning, even though I don't want to, because I know that that's a reset for me. And I really encourage people to think, if you know that exercise is a reset, it's going to make you the best version of yourself, to start to think about putting any dose of movement into that. Maybe it's the transition from work to home. So, I spoke with a police officer who trains other officers, and they actually do their most important exercise in the transition between serving and going home, because they want to leave behind some of the vigilance and intensity that they need on the job to go home to be with their family in a different way. So it's most important for them to exercise in that transition so that they can go home and be more open in a way that they want to be with their family. And for me, it's in the morning. So that's one thing I would think about. Absolutely create a playlist to move to, unless you are like one of the 10% of people who just aren't that moved by music, but most people are, and to put together a playlist that inspires you to move. And the other thing I would say is, so many people get an immediate benefit from moving outdoors. If you are somebody who thinks you don't like to exercise, if there's any natural environment where you feel safe in, and it doesn't have to be the wilderness, it could be any green space. For me, my favorite places outdoors are actually waterfronts in urban areas, where I can see a skyline and the blue sky and some ducks in the river or something. To spend time outdoors will often be the most powerful way for people to immediately connect to the psychological benefits of movement.
As a doctor, I think the bulk of what I now see in my practice, maybe 80% of what I see, is in some way driven by our collective modern lifestyles. And there's a problem out there, and that we can give out information continuously. We can, do public health messaging about what people should be doing. Yeah. But it's interesting to me that information is not necessarily leading to action.
Right.
So why is it that people know what they should be doing, but don't actually do it?
Well, I have two answers for you. I'll be brief. On one hand, if we wanted to get into it, sometimes I'm not sure people know exactly what they should be doing. I think they know the abstract thing, like, oh, I should eat better, I should be more active. But the specifics, like what exactly can I do to be more active in my day, or what exactly should I be preparing for my family? Those are the specifics. So that's one answer. The other answer is, people, well, you know this as well as anybody, life can be really hard for some people. Yeah. And life can be hard. I tend to be a big optimist. I think you're an optimist. But we both see situations where, man, life is tough. And people get discouraged, they get defeated, they've tried to change their behavior before, it hasn't worked, and so on. And then the environment, the food environment, the sedentary jobs we have, and so on, it just all adds up. And a big part of my work, so there's a research part of me at Stanford, and then just kind of on a whim, an accident, I started this habit formation method that I call Tiny Habits, and started teaching hundreds of people a week tiny habits, coaching them personally. This is back to 2011. And about 4 months into that, I probably coached 2,000 people in tiny habits, and really getting a strong sense of what everyday people do in a way that an academic research wouldn't. You do as a doctor, but the way the academic thing is set up and the way you do research, you're not really interacting with hundreds or thousands of people personally. And so that was a new thing for me. And about 4 months in, I got an email from a woman who said, oh my gosh, BJ, thank you so much. Because in Tiny Habits, I teach people how to feel good about their successes and not beat themselves up. And she wrote me an email that said, you have helped me see I've endured a lifetime of self-trash talk. And that just set me back. I just looked at that and I read it and and I was like, what? This was something as a researcher and as an experimental psychologist, I hadn't studied and I really didn't know. But it was by interacting with like hundreds and then thousands of people, and then this particular person saying, wow, I've had a lifetime of self-talk trash. That made me it woke me up in some ways, and it helped me understand where people are really at. And people have hard lives, and they They've tried, the bill collector's calling them, their kids are mad at them. It goes on. And it gave me even more compassion for everyday people, and it was that moment, her saying that took tiny habits from this quirky thing I was doing on the side to, oh my gosh, this really needs to be a global intervention. If this can help people feel more positive and stop the self-trash talk, I need to get this out there. So all that is to say, people may have a sense of what they need to do. And even if they know specifically what to do, so many people are discouraged and feel like I'm not ready, I've tried before, and so on. And that's a big part of what my work is about. It's you can do it. You can do this. And it's not as hard as people have led you to believe.
Yeah, I resonate with so much of what you're saying because, as you say, when we were talking about this yesterday, we come from very different backgrounds in the sense that you have been a researcher and are a researcher, and I'm a sort of in the trenches clinician. So a lot of the tools and techniques that I have found that work with people in real life are very consistent now that I study your model. And in particular yesterday, going through this in detail, I'm thinking, wow, that's why that works. That's why this works. And it's really nice for me to see that, I guess what I've intuitively figured out in practice with people has this research backing. And it's really fun for me because I'm very proud to be a clinician, and research very much interests me, but I've got to, as a doctor, I've always been more interested in what works with my patients. And obviously when it can marry up with the research, that's fantastic. You mentioned you got this email that this lady had been trash talking to herself for many years.
A lifetime, she said.
Yeah, and I think this is worth exploring because it's something I see with patients, and they can have this narrative in their head that they can't do these things, that, every time I've tried before, it failed. I'm not the sort of person who can stick to these habits. It works for them, it doesn't work for me. And one of your sort of key maxims is to make people feel good about themselves. I want to, on one level, it's quite obvious why that's important, but on another level, I don't think it is quite as obvious. Why do you think feeling good is important when trying to create new behaviors?
I'll try to be brief, and you can ask questions to drill down further.
Go as long as you want.
This is probably my next book, but anyway. So the maxim is help people feel successful. And that maxim applies to people creating products and services like Instagram. One reason it really took off is because people used it. They took a picture, they put a filter, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm an artist. Look at my picture. It's so awesome. So they immediately felt successful. The feeling of success is what wires in the habit. It's not repetition. It is a feeling of emotions create habits. And specifically in Tiny Habits, what we focus on is the feeling of success. So when you do something and feel successful, that behavior becomes much more automatic. You're more likely to do it in the future. So if people can do a behavior like 2 push-ups or, eat broccoli or any little thing and feel successful, then that behavior will become more automatic. And there's ways to hack that and help yourself create habits very quickly, very, very quickly, if you know how to fire off a positive emotion. The other thing that the feeling of success does is it motivates you to do it again in the future. That's different than wiring in a habit into your brain. So that's, effect number 2 is increases your motivation. And the third effect, and there's more, but I'll stop here. I call it success momentum. As people do behaviors and feel successful, their confidence, you could call it self-efficacy, increases. And that means when they hit roadblocks or little bumps in the road, they can get through them. That's why I like calling it success momentum. They can get through it. And with that increased confidence, with that success momentum, then they can tackle other challenges in their life more effectively. So that and other reasons are why, that maxim, I only have 3 maxims, and that's number 2. And it's just, if you're designing products and services, bam, that's a key for you. If you're creating new habits in your life, that's a key. Help yourself feel successful. If you're coaching other people, helping other people like you do, that's another, that's the same thing. Help them feel successful. Now, it's only 4 words, help people feel successful, but the way you do that can be challenging. And it's not obvious to everyday people of how, the fact that they just set out their vitamins or took a sip of water, how they can feel successful about that. But people can learn to bring up that emotion and wire in these positive habits really quickly.
Yeah. To make sure you're taking action after watching this video, I've created a free breathing guide that's going to help you reduce stress, calm your mind, and boost your energy. In this guide, I share with you 6 really simple breathing practices that work immediately. Even just 1 minute a day will start to make a big difference. To receive your free guide, all you have to do is click on the link in the description box below. It's incredible, really, and it very much marries up with what I've seen. You mentioned that's what your next book is about. This is the Tiny Habits
possibly.
book?
Well, Tiny Habits, Tiny Habits is out at the end of this year.
Yeah.
I don't know when this podcast ships, but let's say January 1st, 2020, Tiny Habits is available.
I think your work is incredible, and I think it will help people understand how to create a new behavior, but also help them understand maybe where they... I don't like using the word where they went wrong before, but where maybe in the past where they haven't succeeded, it might help them see, hey, I get it.
Yeah, or how people have handed them products and programs, or they've seen them on TV and the internet, and those products and programs were wrong-headed. They were poorly designed. And that's a big part of what I hope people understand is if you've tried to change your behavior in the past and you didn't succeed, it is very likely not your fault. You are not the one that is lacking motivation or willpower. The program needed to be better and accurate. And there are so many programs out there that set people up to fail. And now I'm an optimistic guy. A lot of people think I'm a lot like Mr. Rogers, but I get grumpy about this. When somebody, some company or some institution creates a behavior change program and it sets people up to fail, that's bad. That's where I get really, that's where I get my grumpiest is when I see that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm an optimist like you. I think this is one of the reasons why we're getting on so well over the last couple of days. I always think people can make those changes if we can communicate things in the right way. You say that it's not your fault. My next book comes out at the same time as yours, Feel Better in 5. And actually, I think you're going to really like it because I think the program I've set out for people, actually, a lot of it comes from my clinical research and my clinical experience. But also, I was trying to search through the research to try and figure out, well, why does this stuff work? And your work has heavily influenced that part of the book in terms of explaining why it works. And I think you'll like the program. So we'll maybe talk about that a bit later. But let's go into specifics. So emotions create habits. Okay, I love that. Now, this is a story I shared with you yesterday, but I think it's worth exploring as to why this has worked so well. I've got my own view on it, but I'd love to hear your expertise on this. So a few years ago, I was in my practice. A patient came in to see me, had a whole variety of different problems, and I was coming across all the research on strength training at that time, and we had a long chat about it, and we felt that strength training would be a really good thing for him to do. That would help his physique, it would help his energy levels, it would help his mood. And he was like, yeah, okay, doc, I get it. You've convinced me. Yeah. And he said, what do you want me to do? Would you like me to do 40 minutes 3 times a week in the gym? I said, hey, yeah, that would be amazing if you can do that. And he said, right, okay, I'm going to do it. Okay, so he goes out the door, really, really motivated, really inspired that, hey, I'm going to go and do this. 4 weeks later, he came in to see me at the follow-up. And I said, hey, how are you getting on? He said, doc, you know what? I've actually not been to the gym yet. Work's been busy. The gym's quite far away from where I live. It's pretty expensive. I've just not got around to it. And he looked demoralized, and he felt a little bit sheepish that he was telling me this.
He probably didn't even want to come to the appointment.
Yeah, exactly. Right? But all credit to him, he did. And it was interesting because that moment really changed things for me, because I thought, I didn't think for 1 minute, why is he not doing what I've asked him to do? Good. Because a lot of doctors say that, don't they? They say, oh, doctor, we tell patients what to do, but they don't do it. I've never really had that view. I felt in that moment, I'm clearly not giving him information that he feels is relevant for him in the context of his own life. And I thought, right, I'm going to fix this. So I took my jacket off And I said to him, right, I'm going to teach you a workout right now.
I love it.
That you don't need to join a gym, you don't need to buy any equipment, and you don't even need to get changed to do.
Nice.
So what happens? He goes away, and I say to him, I want you to do this 5-minute workout in your kitchen twice a week.
Just twice a week. Awesome.
He's like,
awesome.
What, just twice a week, Doc? What, just 10 minutes? I said, yeah, that's all I want you to do.
Nice.
And then I'll be happy.
Nice.
So he goes away, goes, yeah, I can do that, Doc. He goes away, comes back for his follow-up. And I said, how are you getting on? He says, Doc, I love this workout, right? I now do it for 10 minutes every day in my kitchen before I have my evening meal.
Yeah.
So this is a chap who we had agreed before that strength training would be good for. The conventional way of doing that wasn't working for him. When I asked him to only do 10 minutes in his house a week, he comes back to me a few weeks later. He's doing 70 minutes.
That's great.
Of strength training every week. Yeah. And I wonder if you could sort of explore that and expand on why is that so successful?
Wow. Okay. Well, let me start with, his ambition to do this huge workout. So often when people decide that they're going to change their behavior, they're in a high state of motivation. So if he's sitting down with you in the clinical setting, he's feeling motivated in that moment. And then he truly believes he can do these hard workouts. What he doesn't, and what we as human beings don't account for very well, is what's going to happen to our motivation in the future. And the motivation goes up and down over time. And so, 3 days later, his motivation sags. He's not able to do the hard workout. What you did so brilliantly is then you matched him with a really simple exercise routine that didn't require much time or money or physical effort, and you set the bar really low. And so if something's really easy to do, that doesn't require high levels of motivation. Motivation can be high or relatively low. He can still do it. And you were just right on to say, just do it two times a week. So that was the bar. Now, what he did was he exceeded that. And you set him up to succeed, not fail. You set him up that the bar was low enough he could do it, so he felt successful. Then he did even more. So now he's feeling like a superstar. He's like the A+ student. He's the student in the front row of the class that knows all the answers. And so that then helps him wire in the habit, and it helps him increase his motivation, which means he can do more and harder things. And I imagine as he was doing more than 5 minutes twice a week, every time he did it, he's like, oh my gosh, when I go back to the doctor, I get to tell him this and so on. And then that becomes part of his life and, very importantly, part of his identity. He starts thinking, I'm the kind of person that does strength training. And more generally, I'm the kind of person who can change.
Yeah. What you said there about identity really strikes a chord with me really, really deeply. Behavior change in so many ways is about identity change, I've realized. And, by doing that and succeeding, he actually then, there was what I call a ripple effect happened after that. It led to more and more healthy behaviors off the back of that one thing that he could do. And I think it's because of what you say, emotion is key. He's feeling good about himself. So he's not the sort of person who fails anymore. He's the sort of person who succeeds.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, in my research, I see this week after week in Tiny Habits. Week after week, about 75% of the people who do Tiny Habits report doing other behaviors besides the 3 new habits that they designed at the beginning. And this is within 1 week. So they start doing other behaviors. About 18% of people do a big change within those 5 days. Not one that was planned, not that one that was part of the Tiny Habits program or what they thought they would do, but change leads to change. And success leads to success. And this dynamic of you do something and feel successful, your identity shifts, and then that naturally ripples out and affects other behaviors in your life. And I didn't, in the first, I would say 3 years of doing Tiny Habits, I saw the data. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. These ripple effects are there. I get it. But what about these big leap changes that people are making, this 18%? And I didn't totally understand that until I started asking some other questions in the research. And I did see clearly that as people do something and feel successful, it shifts their identity in these positive ways. And then they naturally start doing other related healthy behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's just like, to me, it's just like, wow. Okay, so you don't have to have people change 40 things at once or do this huge thing. You just have to help them feel successful on something really, really small. And that works. And then that has these big effects if you do it right. And you did.
I find that when I teach doctors or teach health coaches, which is something I'm doing a lot more of these days, is this is a key thing. I always say, find your leverage point, find the thing that they're passionate about, find the thing that actually they can do and start there. Because it all marries up with what your research is saying, which is, and actually on many levels, it kind of makes common sense, right? If we feel good about ourselves, we're going to start doing more things.
Well, yes, it makes common sense. But then you look at the traditional products and programs for behavior change, and they don't set you up that way. They have you set a very ambitious goal. They have you track it daily so you can see evidence that you're failing. And then they put you on guilt trips by putting you in groups or having a leaderboard and who's winning and who's not winning. All those things are not ways to set people up to feel successful. It's just the opposite. So, when you see it from a certain perspective, you go, wow, it's frustrating that somehow the products and programs decades ago set people up to fail in these ways. And some of those things like goal setting and tracking and keep yourself motivated have become institutionalized. And a lot of my work is like saying, hey, set those things aside. If they don't work for you, you don't have to set an explicit goal. You don't have to track your behavior. You can change your behavior perhaps better without doing those things.
Yeah, that's incredible. And again, you were very careful to say, if that's not working for you, don't do it. And of course, there may be people listening to this who say, well, actually, goal setting does work for me, or tracking it does work for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Keep going with that. You've been running this Tiny Habits program now for many years. You've been teaching, as you said, thousands and thousands of people. So I guess you will have developed insights, maybe in a similar way to me as a clinician, but also in a different way. People who are coming here probably are quite engaged to, okay, BJ is the world's leading expert in this field. He's going to help me start to change some of my own behaviors, right? So they're coming here with a high level of motivation, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
With all these groups that you've taken through your program, what are the common things that people are looking for help with? What are the common habits that people are saying, I want to do this, but I can't?
Yeah.
Because I bet you they must be similar to what the listeners of this podcast are also trying to do in their own lives.
Okay, well, let me be clear about, there's kind of two different buckets here. One is the Tiny Habits program that's free online. It's 5 days, and we interact through email. And that's the program that I've been running since 2011 and that I measure week by week and have all this data around. And so that, now I have trained coaches because I can't coach everybody personally. I mean, this is personal coaching where I read the emails and I respond and so on. And so that's one. The second one is what you're here for now, is my boot camp in behavior design, which is professionals here that are creating products and services to help people change behavior. But like you said, people come here, even though they come here for professional reasons, they're still thinking, how do I help my kid do their homework? How do I get my family to eat healthier food? So the topics are, and you probably see this all the time, people do care about being fit and looking fit to others. Boom. So there's fitness, whether you call it weight loss or whatever. And part of that is driven by they want to look good to other people. At the end of the day, we're all kind of vain and we do care about what others think about us. I mean, frankly, we do. Another piece of that has to do with energy. And you've talked about this a lot. I need better energy. People want to be more productive. I don't think that's the number one thing in their mind, but it's there more and more these days. It's like, how do I stay focused? The ability to focus. In fact, some research I did it was about 60 different aspirations. In that particular research, people staying focused was the number one item, well above weight loss, surprisingly. And I think this is a moving target, right? As social media and other things evolve, people's concerns shift. And certainly parents are thinking about, how do I help my child succeed? How do I help my child create the positive habits that will help them be happier and healthier and more successful? And it just seems like parents are, of course, pretty obsessed with that.
Yeah. Incredible. These are universal themes, aren't they? That pretty much all of us want in our lives. Are there specific personal habits that people keep coming back with? Like, I would like to meditate every day. Although you've got interesting views on meditation, haven't you?
Yes,
You think it's a hard thing
to get? It's a very difficult habit to form. Yes, people do want to meditate. There's a lot of talk about mindfulness and a lot of emphasis on meditation. And I think meditation is a great thing. Don't get me wrong. But it is a hard habit to form, and it's hard to form because as people start meditating, they do not feel successful. They sit there and they recognize how busy their mind is, and that's not a feeling of success. So not only does it take time, and not only do people not have perhaps enough training in meditation, those are barriers, but if you do something and you don't feel successful, that thing is very unlikely to become a habit in your life. Now, there's ways to reframe meditation so people are not so concerned that there's like 1,000 monkeys in their head chattering, that they look at something else for success. But I think most people think, okay, I'm going to calm my mind. It's not calming. It's not calming. I'm terrible at this. Oh, I'm just awful at this. And for that reason, that's what I would hone in on and identify as the problem with making meditation a habit is it's not helping people feel successful, at least in ways that people seem to typically do it.
Yeah, I think for me, when it shifted with meditation is when I stopped beating myself up for having a busy mind.
Yeah.
So my sort of, particularly in the past, my sort of A-type personality, it was like, I want to be able to do something and master it and do it really, really well. And I was like, hey man, I can't do this meditation thing and I can't clear my mind. And it was almost becoming a stress that I couldn't do it. But as I studied it more and I talked to more and more teachers, I understood that actually it's not about clearing your mind. It's about being detached and observing. So now when I do it, it's about looking at my mind. And some days, I hit a Zen-like state and I feel great. Other days I go through my to-do list and I go, oh, you've got a busy mind today. And so for me, I've had to reframe it and that's really helped. But I think that the take home for me, for people listening to this might be, maybe if you've tried meditation and you can't get into it, maybe it's not the right habit for you at this particular moment in time. Maybe work on some other ones that are quick wins and easy wins that make you feel good, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One powerful way to think about habits in your life is to think about them as plants. And so imagine you have this garden. And each plant in the garden is a habit. Now, you can just not design the garden and let weeds grow, bad habits. Think just whatever happens. Or you can design the garden and decide what you want here and there and so on. And as you know, when you garden, sometimes a plant just isn't in the right spot. It's not gonna flourish there. It's the wrong time of year. And that's the garden metaphor in habits, or the garden analogy in habits, is a really, really good way to think about it. It's like, where does this new habit fit naturally in my life? And if for some reason it just doesn't take root, and the root is like the automaticity, how firmly does it become part of your life? That's not your fault. It's like maybe it's the wrong spot in your life. Maybe it's the wrong time of year. Maybe, 3 months from now, there'll be a perfect time to bring meditation into your life. So if it's not working, redesign it. And if you just can't redesign it and nail it, that's fine. Move on and work on other things.
You know what? You just made me think of something I've not thought about in a long time. And that's with quite a lot of my patients. When they want to make a certain change, whether it's a lot of the time it's getting more active, and sometimes it's, in the UK, let's say it's in January and it's dark and it's cold, and I often say to them, hey, look, should we work on something else at the moment?
Right.
And, or in February, I say, hey, why don't we wait for that one until March or April? Because it's going to be spring. Yeah. It's going to get brighter. And I think you're going to actually want to do that more. I think it's going to be easier for you to do it then. Let's work on something else now.
Perfect.
And I guess that really, I like it because it marries up with your garden, your plant analogy, is there is a different time for different things. Yeah. And I guess the more we can tune into that, the more likelihood there is to success.
Exactly, right on. And if people think of that analogy, in your garden, you don't plant something and want to, expect it to be there for years and years and years. You want to evolve it. And that's just like our set of habits. Just because you started a habit, and if you get tired of it or it doesn't do you much good, you can remove it and put something else in its place. And so people tend to have this very rigid thinking about habits, like, okay, I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to walk every day for 60 minutes, and I must stick to that because at one moment in time, I set that down as what I was going to do. That's not the right way to think about it. It's sort of like, here's this thing I can design. I'll try something here, and if it works, I'll keep going. And if it doesn't, I'll shift and try something else and spot and so on. And so there's kind of a playfulness that really helps when it comes to behavior change. Like you're exploring, you're goofing around, you're designing, you're redesigning. You know you're not going to be perfect. You're not even trying to be perfect. You're exploring to find what fits really well. What's the perfect garden for you in that moment? Knowing that plants will die and move on, you'll replace them, you'll evolve it, your taste will change, your capability will change, the seasons will change, and you just keep evolving it in ways that make you happy and healthy and that are fun, really.
Well, let's dive into creating new habits, because clearly it's something we're all working on at various times in our life. No matter what state of health or well-being we have, there's generally always something we're trying to introduce with varying degrees of success. So, to be blunt, how do you create a new habit?
Yeah, it's easier than people think. There's basically 3 steps. You take whatever behavior you want and you scale it down so it's super tiny. So you did this well for your patient. Rather than having him think 40 minutes, you scaled it back to 5 minutes. In Tiny Habits method, you go even more extreme. It's like, it's just like 2 push-ups or 2 squats. Super, super simple. So you scale it back to be really tiny, and then you find where it fits naturally in your routine. What does it come after? So for example, if you want to floss your teeth, you don't floss all your teeth, you floss just one. You scale it way back. I know that sounds ridiculous, but there's a difference between one tooth and all your teeth. And then you find what it comes after. Well, it naturally comes after brushing. So then it's called the recipe in Tiny Habits. The recipe is after I brush, I will floss one tooth. Or it could be things like after I feed the dog, I'll get out my journal and start writing, and not write a page. You just get out the journal and open it. So you find where you scale it back. It's like you're starting a little seed. So let's go back to the garden analogy. You don't start out a huge plant and try to transplant it. You start it out really small. You find where it fits naturally in your routine. And then when you do that new behavior, you help yourself feel good about it. In Tiny Habits, we have a technique called celebration, which allows you to feel a positive emotion in the moment, which then rewires your brain. So your brain goes, wow, I just felt really good. What just happened? Oh, I did this and this, and I flossed that tooth, and I felt really happy. I'm going to do that again in the future. So it's the feeling, it's that emotion that signals to your brain, wow, something just happened. I need to pay attention, and I need to do that again in the future. Now, once you see, this is going against the tradition in a huge way, because people have said for decades, it's repetition that creates habit. It's a repetition. It's not. Repetition correlates with habit formation, but it doesn't create the habits. It's emotions that create the habit.
Man, I love that. There's just so much to expand on in there. Is this the method you used? I think, is it press ups you use this to do on yourself?
Yeah. So in the US, we call it push ups. So man, I have created, of course, goofing around with this, created hundreds of habits. And, one of mine is, after I pee, I do 2 push ups. So when I'm at home, I don't do it at Stanford. I don't do it in public restrooms. But let me use that to call it a pattern that you do naturally. And people should really understand. As you floss one tooth, or as you do the 5-minute kitchen workout, or as you do 2 push-ups, and you're succeeding, you can do more if you want, but you don't have to. So one of the key mindsets in Tiny Habits is you don't raise the bar on yourself. You don't go, oh, this week I do 2. That means next week I have to do 5. Then I have to do 10. Then I have to do 15. If you raise the bar on yourself, you're headed in the wrong direction. Now, you can do 15 or 20, but you should count those as extra credit. Just like your patient did more than 5. And you rightly didn't say, okay, now go to 15 or 20 or whatever, because then you'd be setting him up to fail and feel unsuccessful. So all he has to do is 5. Anything beyond that is extra credit, and he can feel, I'm a superstar. And that's counterintuitive. It's not the tradition of how people are taught to change. But what I found in my research and just working with thousands of people in Tiny Habits is you set the bar really low and you keep it low.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I find it so fascinating that the research you have done is marrying up with what I found. And I've got patients who actually, for meditation, yes, I agree, it can be a very hard habit to create. So I've got many patients who I've made a deal with before they've said, oh, meditation is not for me. I've tried it before, doctor, I can't do it. I'm like, okay, what do you think you can do? Like, is there, what's an amount of meditation you think you can do every day? Can you do 10 minutes? Yeah, probably. It's like, you do 5? Yeah, maybe. I said, okay. And I remember one patient in particular, we made a deal that she would do 1 minute a day. I said, okay.
Awesome.
We're going to do 1 minute a day. I said, okay, so you're going to do 1 minute a day. Fine. When are you going to do it? And we try to figure it out. And I said, hey, look, you put your kettle on every morning to make a cup of tea. So why not when the kettle goes on, at that moment, you do 1 minute of meditation. And she's like, what difference is that going to make? Shall I do it? I said, that's all I want you to do. That will have incredibly powerful benefits. And so she said, okay, 1 minute, that's pretty easy. So she goes and does it. And what I found is that those 1 minutes make you feel good, right? So that 1 minute becomes 2 minutes. That 2 minutes becomes 5 minutes. A few weeks, months later, that 5 minutes become 10 minutes. But when I would start by saying, look, I think about 15 minutes of meditation a day is great. They go away. Yeah, for the first 3 days, whilst their motivation is high, they do the 15 minutes. Then what happens one day, they get up a bit late. They've got to get the kids ready. I don't have time for it today. I'll miss it out. And then they feel, it's not for me. I can't create that habit. I tried it for 3 days. I'll go and tell the doctor, I tried it, but I couldn't actually do it. And I found that when you set the bar really low, people meet it, they feel good, and that leads to the bar naturally going higher because they want to make it higher, not because I told them to make it higher.
And then they feel like, I'm not just doing what the doctor told me, I'm exceeding it, right? So you're totally setting them up.
And they've got agency, they've got control over their life, right? Who wants to do something really because they've been told by another human being to do it? Long term, I just don't get, I don't feel that people want autonomy in their lives. And they want to feel that they're in control. So I love that. And I mean, are you still doing the push-ups now?
Oh yeah.
So okay, when did you start doing this?
Oh man, probably 7 years ago.
7 years ago. So you started off doing one push-up. Two push-ups every time you have a pee in your home.
Yes.
And
Millie right here, my dog, has seen me do thousands and thousands and thousands of push-ups. And so...
what difference have you felt? Have you seen your physique change?
Well, yes, absolutely. So, I mean, and other people have done this too. For some people, push-ups seems to be the gateway change or exercise that opens them up to doing other things. So there'll be times if I'm really busy or stressed or not feeling well, I just do 2. And I go, good for me. I got it done. Right? There's other times I'll do 12 or 20 or even 30. I'll push it up to 30. And I can even surprisingly do 50 if I have to. So I'm 50 something, 56. I haven't been able to do 50 push-ups since college. And now I can. It's hard and it's not what I do every morning, but if I want to get there, I can. So it's certainly helped me get stronger. But there's something also about push-ups that I think about 45 seconds later, a minute later, there's something you probably know what this is. There is this shift and it gives you some mojo.
Yeah, I think this really ties into what you were saying a little bit before, which is this whole idea that it's got to make you feel good, right? So if there's some sort of positive feeling with it, then it sort of wires in the likelihood to do it again. And I often talk to my patients about this for bad habits. I say, look, when you feel low and you're feeling a bit down, a bit stressed, and you go for that chocolate bar or that bag of sweets, or what you'd call a bag of candy, you feel good, right? So then that is wiring in some sort of pattern so that next time you feel low, I know if I buy a chocolate bar, I'm going to feel better. Right. So let's use that process to help create good habits instead of to hardwire those bad habits.
Exactly. Yeah. The way the brain, good habits and bad habits are what we say as a culture. Like eating chocolate cake at 3 a.m. is not a great thing to do, and eating a whole bag of chips while watching football is not awesome. Well, our brain doesn't distinguish between good and bad. All habits form in the same way, good habits and bad habits. And it's this dynamic. You do a behavior and you have a net gain in positive emotions, if I want to be geeky about it. You do a behavior and you feel successful, feel good, that behavior becomes more automatic. And that's what a habit is something you do quite automatically without thinking very much.
So what is the difference then between a habit and a routine?
Good question. Both words are ambiguous and fuzzy. Neither word is a great technical word. We're kind of stuck with those words. Neither word is precise and accurate. Part of my work will be to further refine those words so they're specific. I think most people can use the word habit and routine interchangeably and it works, but we need a better technical vocabulary than what we have. Often people use the word habit to mean something that's just high level and aspirational, like, oh, I want to be more productive. I want to make productivity a habit. Well, that's just an abstract generalization. If somebody says, I want to look at my to-do list every morning, then that's a specific habit. So I don't know if this is very interesting to your listeners, but even the language of behavior change is a little messed up, whereas the word habit means lots of things. People talk about breaking bad habits, and that's not how it works. You don't just put in force and break it and you're done. So I talk about, in Tiny Habits, my book, I talk about untangling bad habits rather than breaking. So, breaking sets up the wrong expectation. So there's a lot of things that have been the tradition in behavior change programs or how we talk about behavior change that really set us up either to fail or think about it in the wrong way. And it's important to help people see it in the right way. And it's fun too, because once people see it, they're like, yeah, of course. You don't break a bad habit, by putting in a lot of force in one moment, you untangle it. And that sets up the right expectation.
I love that. And it's something I've been reflecting on a lot over the past few years, is this whole idea that the language we use matters. Not, you could expand this out beyond habits, relationships, the way we talk to ourselves. All of these things, the language we use, I think it's on a very deep sort of primal level. It really influences our actions and how we feel about ourselves. And I think you can tell a lot about someone by the language they use.
Yeah. Well, so I have a degree in English, a master's degree in English, which is really linguistics and sociolinguistics. And the power of language is the thing that really got me thinking about, wow, one of these days computers will use rhetoric, essentially, to influence our attitudes and behaviors. And that's what led me to create this research program around how might this happen and so on. But yeah, language and even analogy. So let's go back to the plant analogy. If people can look at their set of habits as plants and let's take the example of turning on the kettle. Let's go back to that. When I hear that, what I'm understanding from it is she has a limited period of time to meditate. I don't know how long a kettle takes because I don't do the kettle, but what is it, a couple minutes?
Yeah, a minute, 2 minutes maybe, depending on how much water's in.
So let's say she creates a meditation habit there and it wires in, she feels good, she feels successful, she's ready to do more. She can then transplant that habit to another part of her life. It's almost like the kettle on the stove is the greenhouse. It's the incubator for the habit. And once she dials it in and feels successful on that small behavior, it's ready for something bigger, and she can move it out and transplant it to a space where she can go to 15 or 20 minutes. So the language we use, the analogies, the metaphors can all be helpful or unhelpful. And I really like sharing the helpful ways of talking about behavior change and thinking about behavior change. And that's a big part of behavior design. A model is a way of thinking, and an analogy or a turn of phrase like untangle a bad habit is a way of thinking. So even that simple phrase is a type of model because it shifts how you think about things.
How do you untangle these bad habits then?
Everybody can just think about, you have like an extension cord or Christmas lights that are all tangled up. How do you untangle it? Well, you don't just yank on it. And you don't go for the hardest snarl in the middle. You start with the easiest one on the outside and you undo it. And then you go to the next easiest one, and so on. So it's the same process. So the analogy, I think, really helps people understand, like, let's say you're trying to stop smoking and you smoke, say, 14 times a day or whatever it is. You don't go to the hardest, most ingrained smoking action of the day. You go to the one that's the easiest to untangle. It's like, okay, so I smoke on, when I drive home from work. Okay, that's the easiest one to untangle and start. Let me just stop that one for now. Boom, got that done. Let me go to the next easiest one, and so on. And what often happens is if you get enough of the tangles undone, the rest of them will just fall away, or they won't matter very much. Yeah. Just like with a tangled, set of Christmas lights.
Yeah.
So it's a more helpful way of thinking about it because people understand it's a process. You don't tackle the hardest thing first. You go for the easiest things, and you learn little by little how to do it better and better.
Yeah, a big theme coming through what you're describing and your work is to make it easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I think that's such a powerful message for people listening to this podcast is you want to change something, right? Make it easy. Mm-hmm. And, you were teaching us yesterday about this very powerful relationship between motivation and ability to do something, motivation and ease, and how that motivation does come in waves. So you can't really rely on motivation long term.
Right.
Because I think most public health messaging, kind of relies on sort of, we're going to give you information, we're going to tell you how bad this is, how important it is to do this. And we're hoping by giving you that information, it's going to motivate you to consistently make these choices. Yet we know that it's frankly not working because all this information we're giving people is not leading to a change in action. So I wonder if you could just expand on, this motivation wave and how important it is to understand that and be aware that our motivation and I guess our willpower will run out.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting about the academic work on motivation, as far as I can tell, and I've looked really hard at it, the research about how motivation works and the fact that it shifts up and down over time, that was not studied or published until 2007, and it came out in 2 separate fields that year. Before that time, I can find no academic work that talks about motivation shifting day by day, hour by hour, even moment by moment. So it's not been part of the academic tradition. But I know, everyone knows motivation shifts over time. It's really high at the beginning of the year. It's higher on Sundays for some things. It's higher on Mondays for other things. Motivation shifts around. And so somehow that just hadn't become part of the academic work, the understanding that motivation shifts. Now, one of the boot camps a number of years ago, I was explaining this concept. I didn't have a word for it yet, but it's like, motivation will go up and it will peak. And it's at those moments when it's high, we can get ourselves to do hard things or other people to do hard things, but it's going to come down because that's how it works. And I said, let's name this. And one of the guys at the boot camp, and he's a doctor, Dr. David Sobel, a friend of mine, an MD was there, a GP. He's like, let's call it motivation wave. And I was like, thank you, David. It's perfect because it's like a wave goes up, but it's coming back down. Some waves are bigger than others. Some are little ripples. And so that's what it's called in behavior design, is the motivation wave.
And I guess that really feeds into this whole idea of helping people feel successful, because if you know that your motivation will go down and that's the natural course of motivation, then maybe hopefully people will stop beating themselves up when their motivation does wane, because they think, I can't do it. I'm just not motivated enough. I don't have the willpower to do this. And actually, maybe, again, the language has been used in an unhelpful way because actually that is normal for motivations to come and go. So in the new program I've got out in Feel Better in 5, where every single health intervention takes 5 minutes.
That's great.
Maximum.
That's great. Awesome.
And you want to do more, you can do more, but
Perfect.
You get the credit if you've done your 5 minutes.
Awesome.
And I say, look, when your motivation's high, when you bought the book, right, use it to learn one of these. I mean, there's many things in the book, but one of them are workouts. Use your motivation to learn how to do this particular workout. Right. So you learn it when your motivation's high. But then after a few days of doing it, you will know it. You won't need to refer to the book. You won't need to look at the video. And so when your motivation's low, you're not going to have to, you're not going to have to always come back and go, oh God, how do I do that? Because as soon as we add those steps, the more steps we add, the easier it is to say no to doing a new behavior. And that's why I'm asking them to do the same workout every day at the same time. Yeah, there's another 10 workouts in the book. Choose one and stick to it. Because then you're using what your research and science shows, you're using, all of these factors that you describe: willpower, motivation, ease, all the science behind how you create a new habit. I think it's all in there. It's all it's all built into the design of that program.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear how it goes for your readers. These 5-minute workouts, I think it's right on. It's setting people up to succeed. They choose the ones that they want to do. And hopefully they keep the bar low. They don't say, oh, I did 5, now I have to do 10. Yeah, you can do 10 or 15. You can knock it out of the park the days you're feeling motivated. So from my research, I draw general principles out of it. And one of them is that behavior change is a skill. It's a set of skills, just like playing the piano or the guitar. So you can say, oh, I have the skill of playing the piano. Well, it's fingering, it's phrasing, it is rhythm, and so on. People should look at behavior change in the same way. It's a set of skills. I map it into 5 categories. And one of those skills is knowing when to push yourself further, like do more than the 2 push-ups or more than 5 minutes, and knowing when not to, right? Because if you're just not into it, you're busy, you're sick, just do the minimum, congratulate yourself, and move on. But other times you'll want to push it. And this is how habits that begin tiny can expand. Push-ups is pretty easy to understand. So you do more push-ups to a point where it just barely starts hurting, but not to the point where you hate it. And so you learn how do you go to the edge. And by going to the edge, you expand your capacity and you expand your understanding of, oh, I'm going to push myself on push-ups. Oh, I'm going to go this far. Awesome. But not so far that it really hurts. Now, if you do push yourself into pain, then if you celebrate extra hard, if you go, yeah, my muscles are burning, but good for me, look how many I did, and look what then then that seems to offset the pain that would have caused the roots of the habit to shrivel. So all this is to say that behavior change is a set of skills. Some people, there's about 26 of them. Some people are better at others than the individual skills. But one of them is knowing how to feel good about doing something really, really small. That's a mindset skill. One of them is knowing when to push yourself and when not to.
I think this is incredibly empowering, BJ, because I don't think we've looked at behavior change or habit formation as a skill before. I think people feel they've either got that ability or they don't. Yeah. And actually, on many levels, it is arguably the most important skill to learn, because our behaviors impact, yes, our health, but our professional life, our personal life, our well-being, our relationships. It all comes on the back of human behavior. Yeah. Ultimately, everything is a downstream consequence of our behaviors. And so if it is a trainable skill, why are we not being taught how to do it?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but in my work, in Tiny Habits and other things coming out, I'm mapping out those skills and helping people learn, understand what the skills are, and then learning to make them part of their life. And you're so right. Why isn't this taught to every 10-year-old? Yeah. Here are the skills of change. And we're going to teach you, we're going to work on these 3 this quarter. And next quarter, we're going to work on these 3. And you're going to learn, just like you learn math or writing or a language, we're going to learn the skills of change. I would love to see that.
Yeah, well, I think your pioneering work means that actually this is likely to happen, because I think what was striking for me when studying your research, but also at day 1 of bootcamp yesterday, and I'm looking forward to day 2 today, a lot of it is common sense. It's not common sense in the sense that, who said that phrase? The thing about common sense is not that common. It's not necessarily common sense, but it makes sense when you hear it. You think, yeah, I get that. But nobody's really mapped it in the way that you have. So what I think you're doing, for me, is providing a structure and a framework to start looking at this, and then it can be taught, then it can be scaled.
Thank you.
And I also think you are incredibly modest about the impacts of your work, because yes, we mentioned Instagram at the start. I know people from all kinds of tech giants have trained with you and used these skills for their own products. I know James Clear came on, did Tiny Habits with you
years ago.
Years ago, and he's written a book, Atomic Habits, on again on how you create these habits. And so I think to give you your due, I think you are leading this field, and I think I think you've inspired a lot of people to actually go on and do some great things in the world. But I think that would be a lovely thing in the future if these skills did get taught to children.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly going to be thinking on my flight home, how can I teach my 9-year-old boy and my 6-year-old girl some of these themes, that will help them.
Yeah. Well, and not just kids, but doctors too. What if physicians were trained in the skills of change, and so they could. Now, what happens? Just like learning the piano or guitar or whatever, if you have a good coach or guide, that person can take on some of the skills for you. Like when you're learning to play the piano, choosing the right songs to practice is a skill. And at the beginning, a teacher does that for you. Same thing with habits. Picking the right habits for you is a skill. And at the beginning, you may want a doctor or a coach to help you connect with the right habits. Over time, you'll want to learn how to pick your own, like what's the right habit for me? Another skill is how to troubleshoot a behavior that's not happening. So if you intended to, let's say, text your mom every morning and it's not happening, there's a systematic way to troubleshoot that, and that's a skill. And what you don't do is beat yourself up and say, oh, I lack motivation, or I'm flaky. You start with looking at what I call a prompt. Did you have anything to remind you to text your mom? And if not, then set up some prompt that reminds you. If you are being reminded to do it and you still aren't doing it, then you still don't go to motivation. You look at ability. It's like, oh, is this too hard? And you make it easier to do. And then if you're being prompted and it's super easy, at that point, then it's a motivation problem. And the best thing to do there for a habit you're creating for yourself is, oh, I really don't want this habit. Okay, pick something else. Yeah. So you match yourself with something else. Now, why somebody wouldn't want to text their mom, I don't know. Maybe that wasn't the best example. But the point is, there is a systematic way to troubleshoot, and that is a skill. And it's pretty easy to learn that skill.
Is this skill something you teach in your book, Tiny Habits?
Yes, it's in Tiny Habits, yes.
Yeah, so people who feel inspired by this and go, right, I want to learn that skill, they can buy the book and they can actually learn how to do this, not only for their health, but probably for all kinds of different things in their life, I'm guessing.
But it includes like your children, people at work, and so on. Let's say you want one of your colleagues at work to do a behavior, whether it's a habit or a one-time behavior, and they're not doing it. Often people will just get upset, which is a motivational strategy. That's the wrong place to start. You first go, wow, did that person have a prompt? If not, make sure there was something that prompted them or reminded them. If they still don't do it, it's like, oh, maybe it's too hard to do. So yeah, you apply it to yourself, but once you know the skills of change, you can help other people more effectively. Now, you've been just brilliant and I think intuitively gifted at helping people change. And now you're seeing there's a system behind it. And that's a delight for me to see you connect what you've learned through your practice and you just being gifted in that way to say, wow, this is why this works. This is why this works. Here's what the structure and system looks like. And you, like a gifted singer or a gifted chef, have been able to be successful even without like, here's the system and, go from the system. My work is really about putting it out there and saying, this is the system, and this is how we apply it in positive ways, and this is how we help people be happier and healthier. So for me, it's a delight to create the models. And I do think a lot of the models and methods are like riddles. Once you see the answer, it's obvious. Yeah. But until then, it's a puzzle.
Hey,
it's a puzzle.
We both talk about simplicity, don't we? In terms of how important that is in anything. And I felt, and I was chatting to some of my colleagues yesterday after the course finished and saying there's such a deceptive simplicity in how you teach. but there is so much complexity behind it, but ultimately the way you deliver it is simple. And I think simplicity is absolutely critical to get ideas across.
Yeah.
It is something I know you work on it, something certainly with patients, but also when writing these books, I've sort of been racking my head as thinking, how do you make this simpler? How do you make this simpler? And but I think when you really know something, you can make it that simple. I don't think as I call it, deceptive simplicity.
Well, the people I admire, so influences, Mozart, Calder, Picasso, Charles Schulz, all of those people took stuff and made really simple melodies or really simple line art, or in the case of Charles Schulz, cartoons that are deceptively simple. They're very sophisticated psychologically. So I look at people who have, and I actually have a word for it. I call it the feather principle. It's the simplest thing with the biggest impact. And I admire that in music, in art, and in my own work. I'm constantly pushing for that. What's the simplest thing that will have the biggest impact? And when I create a model, if the model's complicated, it's like, it's not done yet. It's not done yet. It's a work in progress until there's an elegance that comes out of the model. And once, bam, I hit where it's elegant, meaning both simple and powerful, then it's done. If it's complicated, it means it's a work in progress and I haven't solved the riddle yet. And I see that over and over in the work that I do. Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of, I talk about this 4-pillar approach a lot, these 4 core areas of our health that I think have the most impact on how we feel, but also we've got a high degree of control over: food, movement, sleep, and relaxation. It was the subject of my very first book. And after it came out, a lot of people said, oh, you missed this 5th pillar or the 6th pillar. And what's really interesting is that if you'd seen the kind of notes I'd made when creating the book, is they were all there.
Yeah.
And it was trying to marry up effectiveness with simplicity. Yeah. And so a lot of people said, oh, you missed the pillar on connection. I'm thinking, well, actually, no, I absorbed that into the relaxation pillar with a few of the interventions, but I purposely kept it at 4 because I felt once I go to 5, 6, 7, it starts to become too complex to actually be practical in real life. And there is something about simplicity, I think, but it's the same when creating a new habit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me give, it was probably about 2001. I'm at Stanford. I'm at my research lab. And this guy walks up to me. I didn't know very well. I knew who he was because he's kind of famous, Patrick Suppies. He walks up to me and he said, it's not about having the biggest, most complicated ideas. It's about making them actionable. Just out of the blue, Rangan, he walks up to me and says, it's about making your stuff actionable. It's like, okay, first of all, I don't even think he knows my work. And why is he telling me this? But it stuck with me. At the same time, my work, I was looking at what's happening with technology and what would take off. And I clearly saw the pattern in the late 90s that the only things that really took off were drop dead simple. So I was this huge fan of simplicity, even before I had my behavior model. And then Patrick Suppies comes up and tells me this. And I was like, okay, is my work actionable? Oh, not so much. And that really, so I got obsessed with simplicity. I mean, it was natural anyway. I mean, I'm kind of that kind of guy. And then that understanding of simplicity then opened the door to creating the behavior model. So I knew that the factor, I now call it ability, but it's simplicity or ease or capacity. That's one of 3 factors that comprise the behavior. And so with that as a stake in the ground, then I could say, well, there has to be motivation. Bam, that's the next factor. And then third, it was like prompt. There has to be something that says, do this now. And there's only 3 things. So every behavior is comprised of those 3 things. And if you want to start a behavior or habit, you have to make sure all 3 things are present. Some motivation, you have to be able to do it, and there has to be a prompt. If you want to stop a behavior, you remove motivation, or you make it harder to do. You remove ability, or you take away the prompt. It's the same set of, it's the same components for any behavior, whether you're starting it or stopping it, whether it's a habit, whether it's a one-time. So once you see it that way, that's kind of the, wow, is it really that simple? And the answer is, yeah, it is. Yeah. It always comes back to those 3 things.
Yeah, incredible. And you're right, you can literally apply that to every behavior, as I've been seeing yesterday and through your teachings yesterday. I've been thinking, yeah, you can pretty much apply this to everything. It really does marry up. Look, BJ, I'm sort of conscious of your time, and there is so much more I want to talk about, but I know boot camp is starting relatively soon. So let's just quickly knock off a few things if we can. Research out there, some suggest it takes 21 days to create a new habit. Some says 66 days. I'm not convinced. What is your view?
No, they're looking at old paradigms of change. They're looking at the idea that repetition, it's not repetition, it's emotions. There are some things, and I'm going to push on this harder to help make it clear. There are some things that are instant habits. Let's say I buy a new car and I really like that car. How long does it take to drive that new car as my habit rather than the old car? No time. Right? Immediately. How long does it take a teenager to carry her mobile phone around? You give your teenage daughter a mobile phone. How long does that habit take? No, it doesn't. So it's not repetition. It's the emotional experience that people have as they do the behavior. And so, yeah, that whole thing about 21 days, 66 days, that's just, it's people that haven't looked at it from the right perspective that are pushing that forward.
Another question, your pinned tweet at the moment, if I just pull it up, and, which I really, really like. Let's see if I can get it up, because I can't remember it at the top of my head. I really liked this, and where's it gone now? Here we go. A company asked for my 2020 prediction. Here it is. Please don't be offended. A movement to be post-digital will emerge in 2020. We will start to realize that being chained to your mobile phone is a low-status behavior similar to smoking.
Yeah.
You have proven your track record in the past at predicting what is going to happen in technology. Why did you make that tweet?
I'm really hoping, right? So
because I agree, actually.
So. Yeah, I'm really hoping. So post-digital probably isn't the right word, but a backlash against always having your mobile phone out, always taking a selfie, being at dinner, pulling out your phone, that more and more I'm predicting will become something that people are like, no, that's bad etiquette. That's not what you do. And even, I spend half my time in Maui and I go to the beach a lot, and it just drives me crazy when people are at one of the most beautiful places on earth and there they are on I don't know what they're doing on their mobile phone. And it's like, look out, you see whales, you see turtles. And so the idea that doing this, people will more and more understand that this is not like being cool to do this. This is a low status behavior. And I hope with that new framing and understanding that people will then not be so compelled to do it. And then when they do it, they will kind of go like, oh, I need to step out and check my phone, just like people will do that around smoking. Yeah. And so I do think that will happen. I think we can help accelerate that.
No, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. I agree with it. And I think that is coming. Final question then is, we are in your house behind us. And for those of you watching it on YouTube, I know most people listen to it. There's ukuleles, there's guitars, there's piano, there's this gorgeous, what's that device called again?
It's called a vast drum.
I mean, just absolutely. Yeah, absolutely incredible. We probably don't have time to really unpack this, but you were saying at the start that learning a musical instrument is super important.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, for me, life can be really hard. It's hard for everybody. Even if you see somebody and think they have their act together, they still have hard things. And so for me, what totally helps me is being in nature and playing musical instruments. I know that. I was sort of forced to play piano growing up because my mom's super musical, and I did it to be a dutiful son. But I think that training was really helpful for me in lots of ways, because you're a musician, you know this, that you're not going to be perfect. You have a new song, you're going to make tons of mistakes. And that's helpful in behavior change. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And it's part of the process. You're going to get better if you practice in the right way, and so on. So I think the skills and the insights that you get from learning to play an instrument or learning to do anything, you can then apply those same skills or ways of thinking toward behavior change.
Once you recognize that behavior change is a skill.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, BJ, I really want to thank you again for the incredible work you have done. You are changing the lives of many, many people around the globe. Many people will have been influenced by your work and frankly will not be aware that they've been influenced by your work. I think people should go out and buy your book, Tiny Habits. I think it's an incredible insight into how you create a new behavior. And it's going to help a lot of people. This podcast is called Feel Better, Live More. It's, again, deceptively simple in the sense that when you feel better in yourself, you get more out of life. I always like to leave my listeners with some top actionable tips, simple things that they can think about applying into their own life immediately. You have a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge. Do you have a few simple tips that you can share? You probably already mentioned them, but just to inspire them to take action.
Yeah, let me give 3. And top of mind. 1, start every day that as soon as your feet hit the floor in the morning, as soon as you're standing up, say, it's going to be a great day. And I know that sounds hokey, like a California woo-woo hippie affirmation thing, but try it. And what that habit does is it starts your day in the best possible way. In my book, there's only one habit. I tell people how to create any habit they want, but there's only one habit I prescribe. It's that one. I call it the Maui habit. And you say it's going to be a great day. And if you don't believe it's going to be a great day, there's days where I'm like, oh, this is going to be so hard. I say it's going to be a great day somehow. But I say it. 1, do that. Number 2, when you're frustrated with somebody, whether it's somebody that's driving or somebody check it online or your spouse or your child, let that be your prompt to think, everybody's doing the best they can. Nobody tries to screw up. And I find that in my life, that is so helpful to have empathy and patience with people. It's like, nobody tries to screw up. They're doing the best they can given what's going on with them. So I find that helpful. Really tactical and very specific. One habit, it's similar to the tea kettle one you recommended, is as soon as you turn on the shower, have that be your reminder to think of one positive thing about your body. So I shower at night. Most people, maybe whether night or morning, doesn't matter. But as soon as you turn it on, you got to wait for a few seconds for it to get warm, unless you're doing cold showers. I don't love cold showers. While you're waiting, I call it a meanwhile habit. Use that time to think of one positive thing about your body, whether it's, oh, I have a cut, it healed, or my skin is flexible, or I really like, whatever it is, my fingernails. Well, find one new thing every time. It's easy to do. And what I think the bigger effect is, I haven't studied this directly, but I would wager the bigger effect then is you then start appreciating this marvelous thing that is your body. And you start appreciating in new ways. And every day you're looking at it from a different angle. So those would be 3 things.
If you enjoyed that conversation, I think you are really going to enjoy this one about the morning habit that can improve your health and longevity.
One of the things that we know that exercise does is it releases a whole bunch of growth factors in the brain, and that goes directly to your hippocampus, which is important for memory, and literally helps new brain cells grow.